Hello, I'm Linda Mount. I'm with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Apprenticeship, and Workforce Innovation Unit. I'm your host for the California Cybersecurity Industry Convening. It's a pleasure to welcome you all here today. We're so excited for the statewide event that has brought together key partners and major stakeholders, including businesses of all sizes and from different sectors, our K through 12 and higher education systems, government, and our various workforce development partners. We have an exciting agenda planned for you today. We'll hear from 3 keynote speakers, a presentation on apprenticeship, and remarks from representatives in academia. And lastly, we'll have 2 panel discussions, including an employer panel and one focused on diversity and inclusion. All of this with the goal of developing innovative strategies in cybersecurity, workforce development, and education. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping guidelines. Today's event will run from 8:30 to noon. There will be survey questions throughout the convening. We encourage you to fill them out as we're interested in learning more about you and your interests. They'll be available for you to respond to for about 60 seconds each. We will be giving real-time results as well. All attendees have been muted, therefore you will be in listen-only mode. However, we encourage you to use the chat box feature below to communicate with other attendees. Also, the chat will be saved after the convening to ensure we capture important information, including comments, email addresses, etc. On the Eventbrite page and in the chat box throughout the convening is a link to speaker and panelist bios if you'd like more information. Next, and this is important, for those who wish to submit questions to our subject matter experts, speakers, or panelists, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, not the chat bar. The Q&A box you see below is private and it will not be saved. Again, just remember to submit your questions via the Q&A feature and our staff will make every effort to respond to as many questions as possible. We will also have designated Q&A segments throughout the convening, and in those instances, some of those questions will be posed to our panelists and speakers directly. If a panelist or speaker is unable to answer your questions due to time constraints, please feel free to message them privately on chat or connect with them on LinkedIn. Lastly, our convening is being recorded, and we will also make available all slide decks from our speakers at today's convening. We will be sharing a link to the recording with you after the event is complete. We encourage you to revisit the content yourself and share it with colleagues. And now, I have the pleasure of introducing our first keynote speaker, Julie A. Su, California Labor Secretary with the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. It's actually really exciting to know that there are so many people joining who are new to the world of apprenticeship. We are living through what feels like ever-growing crises, the public health crisis, the pandemic-induced economic downturn, which has left millions of Californians unemployed, the racial reckoning brought on most directly by police brutality, but also exposed by the disparate impacts of COVID-19 and an economy that disproportionately fails people of color, and now wildfires and other impacts of climate change. We are called upon like never before to ask, what can I do to make things better? What do I have that can help us out of this? Fortunately, this gathering today will explore some answers to those questions. Today's convening will introduce concrete ideas to meet the workforce needs in the cybersecurity industry, specifically the need for skilled professionals. With your help and leadership, these ideas can become a reality for the good of the workforce, for your institutions, and our shared economy. I want to congratulate and thank Dr. Keith Clement of Cal State University, Fresno, for his vision in creating the first college degree in cybersecurity, and to the many partners here today, too many to name, including my team at the state's Labor and Workforce Development Agency and the Division of Apprenticeship Standards for your extraordinary efforts. In the week leading up to Labor Day, what better reason to gather than to carve out real career pathways for Californians? As Labor Secretary, my agency is laser focused on building an economy with high-road jobs and equity at the center. When I say high-road jobs with equity at the center, I mean good paying jobs that provide financial security, allowing workers to keep a roof over their heads, provide for their families, and to save, with benefits such as healthcare and the ability to take time off when they need to, and sometimes just when they want to, where employees feel they are treated fairly and where they have a fair chance at advancement and raises, regardless of their skin color, gender, or zip code, where they work alongside colleagues who share ideas to protect and enhance the well-being of a company they value because it values them. The data also shows why it's so urgent for us to invest in high-road or quality jobs. Prior to the pandemic, about 1/3 of Californians worked in jobs where they made less than $15 an hour. African American and Latino workers were overrepresented in these low-wage jobs. We have seen these in the workforces that have borne the brunt of COVID. Pre-pandemic, before the current economic crisis, meaning even in good times, a full 20% of California workers making less than $15 an hour had a college degree. The numbers show that educational attainment, especially for communities of color, does not guarantee a good job. And income is just one part of the issue. Wealth inequality is even worse. The median wealth of African American families with a college degree is lower than the median wealth of white families without college. We can and must do better by all Californians. As Labor Secretary, one of my top priorities is to support employers who are creating good jobs by helping you to fill those jobs with skilled talent. To do this, we aim to build bridges to those good jobs so you can benefit from the full talent of California's people. You likely know this data, but I want to make sure we all have the same point of reference. There are 72,000 jobs in cybersecurity just in California alone. A career in your industry offers immense potential with an average salary in California of $111,000 a year, ranging from $40,000 to $300,000 in a single year. With the growth in telework, information security and protecting data are more important than ever. The critical nature of cybersecurity across many industries in ensuring that an organization can complete its mission and retain trust and confidence makes filling these jobs with skilled candidates so critical. Cybersecurity careers involve not just tech, but also creativity, communication, and organizational change management. There are amazing opportunities in this space, and the way we fill these critical high-road jobs is to be intentional and inclusive. With the cybersecurity degree and apprenticeship, Californians who are interested in being leaders responsible for protecting information and information systems will now have an opportunity to connect what they learn in the classroom and on the job with a career. Today's convening provides information on education pathways and the bridge that apprenticeship offers, which connects learning with earning. So I just want to say a couple things about apprenticeship. Apprenticeship programs have long been used by the building trades and in other careers to connect promising individuals who have drive and a desire to career opportunities that they might not even have known existed. California has led the way in apprenticeship programs that have put workers on pathways to high-road careers, given first-generation college students the opportunity to pursue careers in construction, in healthcare, and so much more. Apprenticeships bring a competitive edge to California organizations and make people worldwide take notice. In my first year as labor secretary, I visited a pre-apprenticeship program and met a young woman who was a single mom who told me that she was now learning skills that would not only let her finally give her family financial security, but she could now help her young daughter with math and use the conflict resolution skills that she was learning in her everyday life. The income security was great, but it was her sense of pride and possibility that she would carry with her. Apprenticeships not only launch careers, they change lives. For employers, they ensure a skilled workforce, diverse talent to bring more problem-solving perspectives to the table, and employees whose classroom curriculum has been designed for the skills that you need. Too often, workforce training programs focus just on skills development, but skills divorced from actual jobs is like coaching for the wrong game. Sure, it helps to be better conditioned overall, but you're not going to get very far learning how to ice skate if no one is playing hockey. An effective workforce strategy worthy of California engages employers on understanding what you need and double downs on what we know to be true, that the creation of good jobs and training people for those jobs is good not just for workers, but for business too. In a nutshell, ensuring workers have what they need to secure good jobs and advance their careers, which allows us to also break down barriers of poverty, race, and exclusion, making employers more successful, diverse, and competitive, which means making you more adaptable and ultimately more secure. And bridging those two is the definition of how we build a California for all. So I end with a commitment and an ask. We will build a future of great jobs, of high-road jobs, and a talent pool of people with the tools to thrive in those jobs if we are intentional about building partnerships between employers, educational institutions, and the community. If our educational investments and training dollars support strategic public-private partnerships. My ask to you, to those of you in this vibrant and growing cybersecurity industry, is to commit to take on apprentices. Help extend that pathway so we reach the end game of a California that is inclusive, innovative, with strong companies and strong people focused on long-term sustainable growth, and where prosperity is shared by all Californians. I thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you as we pave the high road together.
What a great way to start our convening. Thank you, Secretary Sue, for your remarks. We'd like to now welcome our next keynote speaker, Amy Tong, State Chief Information Officer, Director, California Department of Technology, co-chair of the California Cybersecurity Task Force.
Thank you, Linda, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for all of you for attending this very important virtual event to look at some of the progress made and challenges that still exist in the prospective cyber workforce and educational developments. I first want to give you all a briefing on the latest update. Thanks to the governor and the legislature's investment, the California Cybersecurity Integration Center, CalCIC, has been significantly expanded. 30 additional personnel from multiple agencies, including the California Department of Technology, and a baseline general fund that has been added. This demonstrates a commitment to and the acknowledgement to the severity of cyber threats, and it would help propel CalCIC into a new era of effectiveness to protect California's economy, intellectual property, and privacy. Additionally, we are very excited that our new commander, Jonathan Newlands, has started in CalCIC. I think it's probably a few weeks now. So welcome, Jonathan. California must constantly adapt to new and emerging cyber threats landscape that is increasing at the rapid pace. The magnitude of the expanded threats is hard to understate. Internet-enabled crimes and scams show no signs of letting up. According to the data released by the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, in 2019 incident crime report, the last calendar shows both highest number of complaints and the highest dollar loss report since the center was established in May 2000. The FBI received over 460,000 complaints in 2019. That's an average of nearly 1,300 every day, and recorded more than 3.5 billion in losses to individuals and business victims. The most frequently reported complaints were phishing and similar ploys, non-payment, non-delivery scams, and extortion. The most financially costly complaints involve business email compromises, confidential fraud, and spoofing, or mimicking an account of a person or vendor known to the victim to gather personal and financial information. We need new and more effective ways to combat these phishing emails. Phishing continues to be the #1 way our adversaries are gaining access to our networks. Nearly all ransomware attacks started with a phishing campaign, and we need to improve our technology and we need to improve our user training. Not only are the threats significant, complex, and growing, but the risk is multiplied by California's sheer size and scale. As is well known, California is the most populous state in the country. 8 of the United States 50 most populous cities resides in California, as does the world's busiest land border crossing. Cybersecurity jobs are still in high demand nationwide, California in particular. I'm sure it will emphasize many times throughout the day today, but here are some, there are currently over 500,000 cybersecurity job openings in the nation and 68 openings in our state. What may not be stated as much, however, is that there are over 100,000 cybersecurity positions that are filled in California and over 920,000 nationwide. This is good news and proves that progress are being made, but there's still much work to do. The California Governor's Cybersecurity Task Force has worked diligently to continue to develop and standardize California cybersecurity curriculum for K through 12, the 2- and 4-year college degree program, and the internship. Thanks large in part to the effort by Chair Dr. Keith Clement for Fresno State. Thank you, Dr. Clement, and your team for the effortless and the committee for this great effort. CDT recognized that building a cybersecurity workforce with the right knowledge, skill, and ability to protect our state information asset is critically important. Competition to hire individuals with these skills come not only from other states, the local government, but the federal government and private sectors, both within the United States, internationally. And I also want to, I want to thank the Deputy Director of Professional Development, Brenda Bridges-Cruz, and our state's acting state CISO, Vitaly Penich, and in partnership working with Department of Industry Relations, Labor and Workforce Agency, and the GovOp agency, the state is actively looking for ways to recruit and retain top talents in the state of California. So in closing, I hope today's forum gives you an opportunity to take a hard look at both the work that has been done in this space and the challenges that continues to persist. Though our state continues to battle multiple complex disasters, the spotlight has not been directly on cyber. This is in no ways diminishing the importance of the issue. Thank you everyone for your time today, and thank you for your engagement in the California Cybersecurity Industry Convening event.
Thank you, Amy, for that informative presentation. I'll now be introducing our speakers for our segment on education programs. Our first speaker will be Dr. Keith Clement, Professor of California State University in Fresno, Chair of the Workforce Development and Education Subcommittee, California Cybersecurity Task Force.
My name is Keith Clement, and I'm a professor of criminology at California State University, Fresno, and I also have the honor and privilege of serving as the California Cybersecurity Task Force Workforce Development Education Subcommittee Chairperson. And so in that capacity, it is great to have everybody participating and attending the convening today. And I would like to give some kind of big 70,000 foot big picture views of a couple of observations of what one can expect to see today and what we'll be talking about and the reasons why we are here, of course. So first of all, I would like to say that it's great to have our representatives from industry and employers, both the public and the private sector. I appreciate the government organizations and government agency folks that are in attendance as well. And of course, our education and higher education community colleagues as well. One thing that we know about cybersecurity and workforce development is that it requires major partners and key stakeholders to be involved and engage and collaborate and work together on the development of these education and workforce development solutions. So I appreciate to have everybody here. It's amazing to get everybody here. And as subcommittee chair, I think that's really one of the aspects of this project that I am personally most proud of is the facilitation and coordination and the bringing together of various folks to support what we are calling a California cybersecurity career education pipeline and pathway that is supported at all levels of education, K through 12, our 2-year school community college friends, our 4-year University of California and California State University colleagues as well, and all of the employers, both small and medium-sized businesses, of course, our large industry. And one thing that we are aware of today is that all businesses, whatever the size, whatever the industry, whatever the nature of the business, we are all IT firms. We all rely on networks and computers and data, and that's where we are today. And so it is extra essential to protect these very sensitive pieces of data, whether it's personal or business, or, again, there's a very ubiquitous feel to IT and cybersecurity today that is, it's everywhere. It touches on every aspect of our daily lives. It starts from when you're a newborn in an incubator and they give you a warm, cooing tablet device. And we understand that most people throughout the course of their lives will have this tablet or this device or the smartphone or whatever it is that you're using to watch this presentation, this view today. So we have a lot to talk about today, and I view a convening of this sort to have 4 major principles and themes that are driving our show today. The first is education programs. Of course, that's the panel that we're on right now. We'll be hearing from our colleagues from the California State University and our colleagues from the UC Office of the President and our colleagues from the Cal Community Colleges. But we need to talk about cybersecurity education programs, that is degree programs and also certificate programs. We need to make sure that all aspects of the talent model in cybersecurity is handled. So there are folks that are going to need some math heavy, science heavy, programming heavy, computer science-y kinds of 4-year degree programs to really meet their occupational goals, their career aspirations as they get older. But one thing that we also understand, and particularly industry understands, is the importance of certificate programs. And a certificate program is obviously vastly different than a degree program, needless to say. And one of the things that we would like to make sure that the certificate programs that we're developing all have a workforce development component to them. After all, that is really one of the troubles that IT and tech and cyber and information systems and software development and many of these types of majors really have, is the need for hands-on engagement, the need to learn by doing. There is no substitute for experience. The textbook might be a great read, but it's certainly not going to install that firewall for you. So we need to have a workforce development component. We also are looking at what we are calling a apprenticeship and a pre-apprenticeship strategy to handle the workforce development component to it. The third part of today's meeting is to have a candid discussion with the cyber and IT and the many other employers that are currently on this call, that are on this webinar. That is that employers and the education communities need to get together with our partners in government to make sure the education programs that are being developed meet the needs of industry, they meet the needs of employers. They are putting, when we are graduating candidates from these programs, employers need to rest assured that these programs meet their needs. They handle the issues that their firm has, that it takes care of their business. And so it is essential to be very involved with the employers. So of course we'll have an employer panelist or an employer panel filled with panelists who have actually done quite a bit of hiring themselves in this area. They will have the opportunity to talk about what they're looking for and not what they're looking for when interviewing and hiring cybersecurity entry-level professionals. And of course, the fourth major theme that we have today is the discussion of diversity and inclusivity and equity and an even playing field in the area of cybersecurity. And that means both in terms of education, that is, everybody has access and availability to these education programs wherever they are across the state of California. But furthermore, we need to make sure that those that do not have a vast tech experience or education to rely upon are able to enter this with what we are calling a soft start. That is, that we want to make sure that people that are entering the field, particularly those that are drawn from underrepresented or historically underrepresented backgrounds, have the skills necessary for success in this area. We do not want to set folks up to not succeed here. We are trying to solve a workforce development problem. We are trying to move people through a pipeline and a pathway to get them to help out with some of California and the nation's cyber workforce development education issues. Towards that end, we have two strategies. These two strategies are intended to develop a career pipeline pathway in the state of California to develop the next 50,000 cybersecurity professionals for entry-level employment from the years 2020 to 2030. It is a big picture strategy. That is, it lays out how to develop the blueprint and framework for a cyber career pipeline that stretches across all levels of education, but it really begins to take off in conjunction with what the California Department of Education calls career technical education, that begins in approximately the 6th and the 7th grade. So this strategy, of course, covers all levels of education. It talks about the value of cyber competitions, hackathons, coding camps, and extracurricular activities, in addition to a discussion of the model curriculum that exists currently in California relating to ICT, information communications technology, and also cybersecurity as a part of that. And the objective, of course, is to get people to work. As we all know, about 1/3 of the economy, American and state economy, has dried up as a result of COVID-19. And as a result of that, we now are left in a job situation that was unlike what it was back in the Great Depression. It is essential to get people back to work. So while the strategy, the cybersecurity workforce development education strategy is the big picture, the first tactic or the first step in the process is through the development of what we call the California Cybersecurity Essential Workforce Youth Pre- and Registered Apprenticeship Talent Pipeline, which lays out a pacing guide that describes the exact steps that a student candidate that is interested in a career in cybersecurity would take. And it begins, again, about 5th and 6th grade at this phase 1 of operations, and it lays out the various components at the middle school and high school levels that should culminate in a student graduating from high school with the equivalent of either a CompTIA Security Plus certificate or its Cisco Network Academy equivalent, or the Red Hat Linux cloud and security sequence of courses. So in any case, there's some programming here and some hands-on labs, etc. But the purpose of the Essential Workforce Talent Pipeline is to provide the California COVID-19 pandemic response, first responders, healthcare, medical, small and medium-sized businesses that have all been hit hard by this COVID-19, and further, the evidence of cyber tomfoolery going on, cyber shenanigans of these very agencies, these very organizations, and the need that we have to protect our systems, our data, our networks, our institutions, our companies, our government, et cetera, et cetera. So it is through the development of a California cybersecurity career pipeline pathway and essential workforce and registered apprenticeship process that we can begin to reduce the significant numbers of California's cybersecurity workforce capacity gap that we have, estimated at 70,000 California cybersecurity jobs currently available, over 500,000 jobs available currently at the national level, and over 1.5 million jobs internationally in this area. So we all have a workforce development issue today. We need plans and solutions to take care of these issues. And I am so pleased today to have the opportunity to introduce and speak with representatives from the California State University Chancellor's Office, from the California Community College Chancellor's Office, and of course our colleagues from the University of California Office of the President. I certainly hope that you enjoy the rest of the panel speakers today. I certainly hope that you find this event to be a very worthwhile event, and looking forward to hearing from many of you in the coming days as we move this industry convening from a virtual meeting into a ecosystem where we are putting qualified candidates finishing education programs together with industry employers on the public and private sector side, as well as putting folks to work in our government organizations in the area of IT and cybersecurity. Thank you very much. The host will introduce our next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. Next, I'd like to introduce Shani Weber, Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development, California Community College Chancellor's Office.
Thank you, Dr. Clement, for this invitation to speak at this event. I am Shani Weber. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development at the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. My job is to consider how our system delivers the workforce that our state needs now and in the future. The work that we do is focused on career pathways to careers with good living wages that supports families and communities. It's not just students who need these clear career pathways, but also working adults and professionals who can also benefit from having clear career pathways, particularly in the growing industry sectors that we know of, and cybersecurity and IT is one of them. And especially during this time of rapid change where jobs and job skills are evolving quickly as we're grappling with the future of work, which really has been accelerated by this pandemic. Keith mentioned earlier the work to create a cyber career pipeline of 50,000 in the next 10 years. I've also seen estimates about figures on the cybersecurity workforce shortage, either nationally or around the world, anywhere from 1 to 3 million in the next couple years. So clearly we have a lot of work to do. The way I see it is cybersecurity is part of an ecosystem with very specific interconnections to privacy, to cloud computing, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence or AI, big data. I think you can even argue that there's tentacles to areas such as sociology, psychology, and many other areas that not mentioned here, and probably business. And we also know that cybersecurity is about threat assessment, and obviously one of the threats that we're facing for the industry is not having enough qualified workforce. But we also see sort of a catch-22 in trying to develop this workforce. What the industry really wants and needs are experienced cybersecurity professionals. We all know that. That's the preference. The students we produce often do not have much experience, if any. Apprenticeship models are a great way to provide people with this learning and on-the-job training at the same time. And one of our colleges, College of the Canyons, is doing good work there. Apprenticeship programs, though, alone is not enough, because one of the things about apprenticeship programs is it can be costly and it can be challenging to scale. Finding willing employer partners can be challenging for us as well. So the question becomes, what other kinds of earn and learn models can be developed and can we put in place to grow the IT and cybersecurity talent pool? What models can we put in place that will support lifelong learning once you enter the IT field? We also need to find more ways to get people to choose IT as a career of choice. That is a challenge before us. One way to do that may be for all of us, public, private, and nonprofit sectors, to band together to mount a very ambitious consumer literacy campaign. Everyone needs to be educated in layman terms on the basics of what I call the invisible technology that is driving our lives today. It's not just about cybersecurity. We know AI is working in the background. We use cloud computing every day. Internet of Things means we can plug all kinds of devices into our network. Machine learning, all of these topics, what they are, what they do. Why is it important for us to become savvy consumers? It's important because of a lot of issues around privacy. Many are concerned about that. How do we understand how these things matter to us, every one of us, right, every day, not just to the experts or people who choose it as a career? For those who remember, in 2010, NIST initiated a national public awareness and education campaign to promote cybersecurity. The National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, which is called NICE, had its dual goal of having a cyber-savvy citizenship and a cyber-capable workforce. It's about raising awareness of consumers, enhancing the cybersecurity education, improving the structure, preparation, and training of cybersecurity workforce. So this idea of increasing savviness and education of consumers as a way of developing the workforce is not new. It's also a great way to address the issue of equity and access and to increase the diversity of the information and security workforce. As more and more devices come on the market, everyone needs to understand that anything connected to the internet is accessible. I've heard about the people hacking baby monitors, hot tubs, and printers. Even our cars have become very expensive computers that can potentially be hacked. The pandemic itself has shown us how highly interconnected the world is. We all know that now. The internet has fundamentally changed the way we live, the social, the cultural, the business, and political experiences of people, even the educational experiences of people. Rather than just focusing on cybersecurity workforce, what we need to do is look at clear information about career pathways and the various doors that anyone can enter into this profession. How can we build doors, so to speak, from non-technical disciplines that have not been previously considered? So I think about sociology and psychology. What kind of aptitude do we need to understand and for people to have who can make good cybersecurity or IT professionals that may be worth exploring, and figure out how to bridge these skills and attract additional people to the field. What this means is also organizations should be casting a much wider net for talent. I know companies are no longer limiting their search only to applicants with certain backgrounds or certain security qualifications. I've seen companies be more open to the idea of recruiting candidates from tangential industries, sectors, and academic qualifications. That's a really good start. And Another thing is thinking about, instead of hiring recent college graduates with degree in cybersecurity, how do we work together to become better at spotting what skills and qualifications are transferable to cybersecurity and enticing these individuals into the career? As a system, the California community colleges are moving towards competency-based education, which means building in more experiential learning opportunities for our students. That is going to be key. Apprenticeships and internships are great examples of that. There's also a number of questions that we still need to more fully answer. Do we have a clear understanding of career paths? So that's a question for our industry partners. What does a typical career look like? What is the fluidity between the various sectors of IT and the flexibility that affords individual to move from one IT sector to another? How do you progress from an entry-level role to a senior role in cybersecurity? Our Systems Guided Pathways initiative is focused on removing these friction points in our system to better serve our students and to increase retention and success rates. And it's really important that we have a clear understanding and knowledge of the cybersecurity skills that organizations need for us to partner with our industry partners to really build robust and meaningful, relevant curriculum and skills for our students. We also need to better understand what is the actual length of education, the full cost of education to prepare for a cybersecurity career. This is really important for our students to know. And what are some career opportunities along the way while they're obtaining their credentials that they can also be earning a living in? As a system, we are also very focused on equity in serving our students. We have one of the most diverse student body in higher education in California. So I'm offering and making an open invitation to companies who are serious about addressing the equity issue in the cyber workforce to partner with us. Many of you know NSA and has this National Centers of Academic Excellence program that focuses on improving cybersecurity education in the US by encouraging colleges with cybersecurity degrees to meet a set of academic standards, which is developed by experts. That's a good place to start. We have a handful of colleges with cyber programs. We need a lot more of our colleges to become certified center of academic excellence. And I know one of our colleges, Long Beach City College, has achieved that. I'm looking to support more colleges in achieving that credential. And we also need to look at how we create more extensive on-the-job training programs for the newly minted workers in the field. It's also an important component to this learning ecosystem that we're building. So why should people care about cybersecurity? We need to answer that question in terms that anyone can understand. To solve the problem of cybersecurity workforce shortage, we need to build a strong ecosystem and create some common metrics to help employers understand programs, certificates, and degrees, and which are the most effective. I know many are also thinking about how to invest in modernizing the K-12 and higher ed curriculum. Keith mentioned that earlier, and finding ways to educate the masses. All of this takes really important partnerships, real and deep partnerships with industry, with education, with the community, which is not easy to do, but it's what we need to do to play the long game. So in closing, I'd like to ask you to join us, the California community colleges, and many of the other partners in identifying clear career pathways for our students, partner on the apprenticeship programs. We do have funding to support apprenticeship programs, build earn and learn programs, hire our students, provide them with on-the-job training. Most of us are essentially working online now, and this is a long game that we're playing, which means we really need to grow this important ecosystem. And we heard Amy Tong talk about the economic losses that we're experiencing. And it's just one reason that cybersecurity talent pipeline is so critically important to our economy. So with that, I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Weber. Our next speaker is Dr. Sheila Thomas, Assistant Vice Chancellor and Dean of Professional and Continuing Education for the California State University System.
Glad to be with you to discuss the California State University Professional and Continuing Education, or PACE, strategic priorities for cybersecurity under our theme Celebrating the Adult Learner from Education to Employment. The California State University is the nation's largest four-year university with 23 campuses serving 482,000 students, 53,000 faculty and staff, conferring over 100,000 degrees each year with 3.8 million living alumni, and 1 in 10 employees in California is a CSU graduate. PACE serves working adults through degrees, certificates, and credentials based on student and industry need and demand on a self-supporting basis without any state financial support. Many working Californians will be faced with the need to change professions or at least upskill during their work lives. And California needs at least 1.5 million more BA educated people by 2030. So where does PACE fit? PACE offers degree completion and graduate programs, plus hundreds of professional development certificate programs in a variety of workforce and industry-specific fields. Next slide, please. One of these essential industry-specific fields is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity education is not new in the CSU. System-wide, there are centers of excellence, bachelor's degrees with specializations, master's degrees, credentials, and certificates. But COVID-19 has caused the lives of millions of Californians to be disrupted, including their pursuit of higher education. For many employees, this means delay in obtaining a certificate or credential so they can remain in or re-enter the workforce. Industry and employer partners tell us they need employees with the skills and knowledge for today as well as post-COVID. Next slide, please. Prior to COVID-19, but certainly accelerated by the pandemic, PACE has partnered with 3 essential California industry sectors, cybersecurity, life sciences, and fire service, who have urgent and emerging workforce needs. They are seeking our assistance in helping them train their incumbent and future statewide workforce. While each industry has unique needs, the synergies that emerged from multiple conversations solidified the basic premise: continuing education is the key to success. Campuses are aligning their interests and resources with one or more of the industry sectors in a regional consortium model. Across all 3 essential industry sectors, the initial offerings will include certificates, credentials, and degree programs for incumbent and new employees based on current and future workforce needs. Next slide, please. So we have organized the work around sectors, synergies, and priorities with our industry sector and priority leads through regional representation. In the area of cybersecurity, the industry prefers stackable professional certifications linked somehow with work experience, such as on-the-job training. While many have struggled to provide cybersecurity education, there are opportunities for incorporation of the hands-on learning. As such, we are looking at 2 types of cybersecurity certificate programs to serve critical California essential workforce needs. First, programs directed at training entry-level positions with curriculum linked to on-the-job training. And second, in-service certifications in specific essential workforce sectors, including the life sciences, health and medical. Civil service sector includes public safety, service and emergency response, and support for small and medium-sized businesses. Next slide, please. Through implementation of these strategic priorities and working with our essential industry partners, We will positively impact the state workforce needs through a combination of innovative program development and regional consortia delivery. Providing additional options for those seeking to complete a degree or certificate will deliver further opportunities to improve their long-term economic and social mobility. Thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Our final speaker for this segment will be David Resting, Chief Information Security Officer, University of California, Office of the President.
Great, thank you so much. And I really want to thank the Secretary, Director, and Dr. Clement for inviting me to come talk today. I think there's so much, this is probably one of the biggest challenges in from my perspective, is really workforce development and getting the talent that is required in our university and also across our state and globally. So I have some observations. I've sort of taken a slightly tangential tact. I'm going to talk a little bit about basic stuff, but also the senior level skills that we look for when you're getting not just CISOs, but also senior level folks within cybersecurity. So you can kind of map a path for those that want to get into this career. So next slide, please. We've heard a lot about the size and scale. One of these reports says 3.5 unfilled jobs globally by next year. That is probably, you know, the numbers are there, and it is probably growing. As we have seen, regardless of the pandemic, we still need skills in this area. This is not going away anytime soon, and we as a collective need to work toward trying to close this gap and get our citizens and members of our community trained and educated and available to help us fight the never-ending wave of nation state and cyber criminals that threaten our continuity of our business. Next slide, please. So this is a slide I believe Intel put together in one of their reports, and just looking at some, you know, how do you get there? And part of it is we talk about non-traditional academics, and it's kind of odd, somebody from a university talking about non-traditional academics, but I would offer that we're already doing non-traditional things with certificate programs and internship programs and extensions and so forth. There's lots of different ways to get there. The challenge that I think many people have pointed out in the chat is that, you know, sometimes there are choke points or not enough resources to get folks the basic skills they need, as well as the opportunity to put those skills out there. And it goes to the diversity point. We have to cast a much wider and inclusive net to pull good candidates into our environment, train them, educate them, give them the enterprise IT skills and enterprise organization skills that they need to grow in their career. And obviously there's, you know, lots of jobs and lots of money, but the key is we really need to cast a very wide net in order to make things work for us. Next slide, please. So some of the top skills for cybersecurity engineers or friends at Career Karma have, you know, all sorts of things you can look at, right? From programming to continuity planning to risk analysis. There's so much out there, and there are many programs out there that will give folks that training certification. There are online education services out there. It's really driven by the eagerness of the candidate, as well as some of their basic, you know, interests and curiosities. Some folks are very interested in cloud security. Some folks are in penetration testing. All these things sit in the world. And as you go through your career, next slide, please, you may want to go to a senior level position. And I use the term CISO here, but this could be any senior security director position. And, you know, traditionally they're technologists, they're guardians, right? They have a long history in tech, and they also understand I got to protect things. But they really need to move to be strategic and advisory. And these are skills that you actually sort of need to develop throughout your entire career. Even when you were a junior person or starting out, you got to think long term. You have to also look to being advisor and collaborative with people. And we've seen a shift in this over the years, and it is really, really important to work through and develop skills on the strategic and advisory front. Next slide, please. And, you know, I look around, I was like, how we are so challenged for time and taking things in. And Joyce Bracaglia, who's a recruiter in this area, had a little clip on one of the information security media groups presentations, and it's actually pretty good. It kind of goes over a lot of they talk about the senior level skills that they're looking for, but as I'll go through the next slide, there are many things up. Yeah, I said next slide and they put it right for there. That's fine. She really goes over a lot of things that we need in also anybody's work competency bag, not just for senior level folks, but these are very applicable to that. Next slide now, please. Thank you. So some of those things beyond just the technology, we need people that can strategically think. They need to be able to think in a longer, broader fashion, and kind of know where we are and where things are going. And at the same time, critical thinking. And I've seen in the chat a lot of folks talk about how do we, what are the soft skills? What are the things people need? It is today more than ever, it is very hard to discern sometimes what is fact, what is fiction, weaning through information sources. Cybersecurity is no different, right? There's different perspectives and opinions. Critically think, and how can you work through that information to come up with a good understanding of the things that are feeding into your strategic plan. Understanding business impact. This also like you say business impact or mission impact, because many of us have a very strong mission-driven culture. Do you understand your company and your organization and your institution? Are you able to articulate what they do, the value they provide, and what the impact of cyber risk management and cybersecurity is to them? I think that's a very key thing. The ability to scale. We are in a global world. Scaling thinking is very good, because if you think about, it's sometimes very easy to do something by yourself or with a small group of people, but when you want to make it work at large scales, as we do in the state, you can't just have a 1-to-1 ratio of adding people for work. It just doesn't, it's not effective and it doesn't work. And so you look for things around scaling. Resiliency, the saying we have is you don't control the threat, you control your readiness. And so are you developing skills to be resilient, not just for your organization, but for yourself? Something bad happens, a breach happens. How are you responding? How are you bringing the organization back? How are you taking yourself out of a defensive role to a more proactive role in trying to move and lessen the impact of attacks and breaches on your institution? I think communication is very important, especially at the board level. I think communication is always important. That's a soft skill. Relationship development is very key, because you're dealing with people just like yourself, different opinions, different perspectives, and it's very important to communicate, listen, understand, and then also be able to translate that into something understandable for people who do not live in the IT and cyberspace world. Just because we all have smartphones and computers and tablets and online accounts and all that, it doesn't mean people have a technical understanding nor the understanding of the threats that may be coming at them and the impact to their mission. And finally, collaboration. I can't emphasize this enough. No person is an island. We really need to collaborate together. You need to foster that skill. You need to learn that. And I saw a comment in the chat about, how to being an apprentice or an intern help. Part of it's getting that experience in a enterprise organization or specific industry, be it healthcare or food services or retail or whatever it might be, to understand how those businesses work, how they flow. And so that's a skill that I think is very important, because you build upon that through your entire career. You are always collaborating over and over and over again. Next slide, please. And finally, a couple resources. We focus quite a bit on diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a Women in Tech initiative out of UC Berkeley, which I think is great and a good path into finding opportunities in the cyberspace. There's also the Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, which has a plethora of information and events that help folks understand and get that strategic thinking of where things are going in the cybersecurity arena. UC Extension, we have multiple extensions at multiple campuses. I've listed Irvine, Davis, and LA here, but many boot camps for learning cybersecurity in our environment. And finally, the Inroads Program. And the Inroads Program basically it enables us to get underrepresented populations into our programs. We actually work through them to have them pull, in some cases, our interns and other folks to give them the opportunities in cybersecurity. I've done this in my office for the past several years and gotten some great candidates who have gone on to good high road jobs, as the Secretary mentioned. I think this is a really good program. And there's other ones out there in the market as well. But again, sometimes it's not enough to put just, I'm looking for an intern or this or that. You actually have to make a concerted effort to pull from those underrepresented populations, show them that there's a opportunity there, and get them in the door so that they can get those skills, get that experience, and grow in our environment. So with that, I wanted to again thank everybody, and glad to take any questions in the Q&A as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Dr. Clement, you're up next with the Q&A. I can see you.
Great. So I have a pair of questions in the Q&A. The first one is, what efforts are being put into place to recruit highly qualified instructors for all of these programs across all grade levels? And that's from Carol. I gotta tell you, Carol, that is an essential problem that we have here. That is that on the one hand, we are talking about increasing the number of education programs, degree and certificate, across all levels of education. And I frequently hear one of the key issues is their ability to find instructors at all levels of education to teach computer science, to teach information technology, to teach cybersecurity. So actually, in the California Cybersecurity Workforce Development Education Strategy that we're putting forward, we actually have several recommendations that are directed at increasing instructor capacity to teach IT, computer science, and cybersecurity courses across all levels. They involve a variety of different strategies, but I will be happy to provide that document later at the end of the week to answer your question in a lot more detail. We could almost spend all day chatting about how to increase the number of educators. All of our programs need them. One way that we really like to see is have our public and our private sector folks that are working in the field spend some time in our classrooms, K-12 or college, university classrooms, either as educators or as mentors, or for some of the wraparound services like networking and those types of things. So I hope that answers your question, and in more detail, I'll be happy to go into that. Myron J. Curtis, how are you today? Are there processes in place that coordinate these efforts with the actions of the legislative and judicial branches to ensure that laws and interpretations are compatible with the training our professionals receive? You know, let's be clear that cybersecurity education as a workforce development issue has a tremendous effect on the ability to legislate and have secure judicial process, shall we say. So we really need to make sure that this is key, as well as the idea that in California we use the word privacy all the time. And with that in mind, this further includes the notion that their interpretations are compatible with the training professionals receive. I also see an email or a message from Costas. Hello, how are you today? Walking the walk is vital for apprenticeships. I asked the question for CIO Tong, how many apprenticeship positions are active in your department and what impediments to increasing that number? So actually, the California Department of Technology has been extraordinarily progressive in terms of this. So I don't know the number of apprenticeship positions. That's pretty specific of a question. But I'll tell you this. They have a variety of apprenticeship programs for existing California state employees that are able to take them into tech. And for example, the Z mainframe apprenticeship program is the first one that comes to mind. However, Costas, I am happy to get back with you offline and give you the answers to the questions the best that I can find, right? I don't know. Do I have any more questions? I see David here. Oh, I'm sorry, David. Are you around, David? If David Rusting is available, I have a question for you.
I certainly am.
So Z Serrano asks you, I have trained up many people with great soft skills into great InfoSec pros. Most of these people had no idea that they would do great in the field due to lack of exposure. How do we get more people access or exposed to the InfoSec life?
People think of cybersecurity and it's just, okay, it's computer stuff. I got to code, or computers. It's technology, or it's servers or cloud stuff. It's all techie. And what I try to expose people and realize, there are so many opportunities in what I would call tangential areas, in the areas of law, in the areas of insurance, right? There's cybersecurity insurance, in the areas of healthcare and medical devices. I mean, you can go on and on and on. And so when you talk, about doing cybersecurity work, it sort of helps to move it from a purely techie IT thing, which you do need to have. It's really good to have the fundamental enterprise computing understanding and experience, but really to expose them that they may want to look in other industry verticals for opportunities, because there's a lot of horizontal skills that go across. So hopefully that answers the question to a certain degree. That exposure is really driven by trying to make them aware that it is not just a techie thing in tech companies. It is in large enterprise organizations. It's in small, mid-sized organizations. It's across the board. And so don't pigeonhole yourself or think, oh, if I want tech experience, I got to go to work for a tech company. The people who need the help the most, who are at the most risk sometimes, are the companies that are doing other types of work, but they need that good cyber experience. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, thank you very much. I do believe that the Q&A for the most part seems to be handled. I do apologize. Jim Cates has a quick question. Is there a way to get a list of companies who are willing to interview and give jobs to qualified minorities? Well, I think that there's a variety of ways that we would like to engage with companies, both in terms of access to the selection and the hiring process, as well as making sure that qualified minorities and women have tremendous opportunities, both in terms of education programs that are accessible and available to them in their communities, that they will have the option to be, that they will be successful in. And then we need to be better at making the transition from a student to worker. And I think that's one of the reasons why the apprenticeship model and the pre-apprenticeship models both seem to work very well. So Jim, I hope that's an answer to your question. And if you would like additional information, please reach out to me, and we will give you a copy of the California Cybersecurity Education Workforce Development Strategy that discusses the ways that we are working to improve and enhance the number of qualified minorities in the IT and the cyber workforce in general. And Tina, thank you. We'd love to have a list of the participating companies as well. Thank you very much for all of that. Linda, I think it's back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. Our next segment will be on registered apprenticeship, and I would like to introduce Kelly Mackey, Regional Director of Strategic Partnerships, Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Unit, and Sagai Arafane, Strategic Business Analyst, also with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Unit.
Thank you, Linda. Again, I'm Kelly Mackey. I'm the Regional Director of Strategic Partnerships with DAS's Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Unit. And I'm accompanied by Sagai Arafane, Strategic Business Analyst, also with the DAS's Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Unit. So who are we? We are a unit that's been established by the prior governor essentially to develop registered apprenticeship programs in non-traditional sectors. Our unit was bifurcated to allow for us to focus on development of apprenticeship programs in industries such as information technology, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, public sector, biotech, financial services, insurance, logistics, among many others. So what do? We do a number of things, including educating the public on the benefits of registered apprenticeship program, which in turn provides employers with a viable, time-tested workforce recruitment strategy that allows them to get the skilled workers that they need. Through this process, our strategic business advisors assist with the structuring and registering of the actual apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. This process gives workers the skills that they need in order to learn ideal and in-demand roles that they're seeking to enter. This process also allows a strengthening of alliances. By virtue of development of the registered apprenticeship program, it brings together industry, labor, education, our government, and facilitates those critical partnerships in order to create a registered apprenticeship program. And then lastly, through the process, our strategic business advisors provide a personalized support system to help you develop your program from beginning to end. This also involves helping to bring potential opportunities for funding streams and to ensure that you're complying with all of the necessary rules and regulations associated with a state registered apprenticeship program. California is the national leader in apprenticeship. In fact, we have 5 times the number of registered apprentices as the state with the next highest total. Currently, we have just north of 96,000 registered apprentices, about 130 registered pre-apprentices. We have roughly 36,000 participating employers who provide the critical on-the-job training throughout the state of California for our apprentices. We have about 300 active educational institutions, and that number continues to grow as we look to develop registered apprenticeship roles in 4-year colleges and universities that require upper division coursework. And then lastly, we graduate roughly about 8,000 apprentices every year. As employers look to build their 21st century workforce to meet the demands of a global market economy, increasingly a number of these sectors and employers within these sectors are turning to the registered apprenticeship model to meet that challenge. Here is a landscape of what our current development looks like in the area of programs that have either been established or are currently being developed. Let's start with the information technology sector. Our first ever public-private partnership was established with IBM. This was a program focusing on development of registered apprenticeship roles in 3 separate mainframe domain occupations. Secondly, we have a critical partnership with Amazon that includes mechatronics and robotics, software test specialist, and another IT role as well. We're currently developing a program with the Sony Corporation, and that program is focusing on IT sales and marketing specialist roles. We have a number of cybersecurity apprenticeship programs, some of which are included here. They include Palo Alto Networks, the San Francisco International Airport, Adaptive LLC. Secondly, we have a partnership with CCS-SF, which Sagai will talk about later in the presentation, focusing on the 2 occupations you see before you. And then lastly, perhaps the best illustration of how this model can be integrated into an employment setting, whether it's a small, mid, or large multinational corporation, Slow Partners, which brings together a consortium of small employers focusing on the development and deployment of cybersecurity apprenticeship programs. There are roughly 9 or 10 occupations, and these are centered around cybersecurity roles. Second, in our healthcare industry, we have partnerships with 3 of the healthcare giants in this country, first of which is Kaiser, secondly, Dignity Health, both of which have apprenticeable approved occupations and a number of allied healthcare roles. We're currently developing a clinical laboratory scientist occupation for Dignity Health, as well as a partnership with Sutter Health focusing on health facilities technician. The state of California developed the first ever LVN to RN registered apprenticeship program. Currently, we have 3 iterations of this model with partnerships in academic institutions throughout the state. This program was featured at the National Institutes of Health annual conference back in 2018 and has been deemed a model for the nation by the Pew National Trust. We're also working with the California Community Health Clinics to develop a number of IT and healthcare roles, so that cross-pollination between IT and healthcare. And then lastly, we're working on a partnership with a Bay Area consortium, which consists of 5 counties, focusing on the development of a medical assisting occupation. California has led the nation in development of registered apprenticeship programs in the public sector. We launched the first ever government operations IT apprenticeship program focusing on networking. We have since added additional occupations and will be developing a cybersecurity statewide apprenticeship program in the spring of next year. Some of the occupations that you see before you have either been established or are currently in development. Not unlike the state of California, so too have our county and city governmental partners been struggling to find those critical skilled workers to fill many vacancies within their organizations. And that extends to the special districts and municipalities as well. We've developed a partnership with San Joaquin County that focuses on legal occupations, including legal assistant and paralegal, as well as information technology. We're currently developing a program for Yuba County focusing on the occupations outlined here on the slide. And then lastly, we're working with the mayor's office in Los Angeles County to focus on the development of a number of roles, including IT-focused occupations. Lastly, in the advanced manufacturing space, we have a partnership with Tesla, focusing on tool and die specialists. And then finally, a partnership with the largest winery in the world, Ernest and Julio Gallo, with the occupations outlined on the slide.
The talent shortage, what does it mean? The talent shortage is real, and we are looking to address that through registered apprenticeship. A study examined 700 healthcare organizations, and in the past year, 75% of the healthcare industry has been infected with malware. Cybersecurity job postings have gone up 74% over the past years in the US. And on a global scale, there would be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs by next year. Government, retail, and technology are the industries that received 95% of all breach records in 2016. They have become a popular target because of the high level of personal information in their records. The average cost of data breach this year will exceed well over 150 million. And unfortunately, 80% of small businesses that have 50 or fewer employees that experience a data breach will go out of business within a year. Unscheduled disruption resulting in cyber threats are costly and potentially disastrous. The CDT estimates almost a 40% vacancy rate in IT-related positions over the next half decade. The cybersecurity job reports again estimated that there will be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity positions by the end of next year. There are currently just not enough applicants with the right mix of skills to fill these jobs. We have some staggering significant data that is troubling here in the state of California. It is estimated that there are currently north of 72,000 cybersecurity job openings, and at a national level, there are 500,000 cybersecurity job roles that are unfilled. It was these staggering data points that in part prompted us to develop these IT cyber apprenticeship programs, in which I'll talk about in the next slide. SLO Partners is an excellent example of employers coming together and really addressing these staggering vacancy rates in the IT and cyberspace. This program was developed to train apprentices in their respective discipline. These occupations range from computer support specialists to network security administrators. Currently, there are 16 participating employer partners, ranging from small, mid-size to large, and we are certainly expecting that list to grow. They are partnered with the San Luis Obispo County Office of Education, who is the local education agency partner that sanctions and assists in the development of the curriculum, which is complemented with the on-the-job training provided by the employer that hires on the apprentices. Lastly, all of this is built around the California Apprenticeship Initiative grant that helps offset some of the initial costs of the development of this apprenticeship program. The City College of San Francisco Information Security Analyst Apprenticeship Program really addresses the need for qualified information security analysts. This program was developed to train apprentices in information security. This program lasts about 1.5 years and consists of a range of 2,100 to 2,700 on-the-job training hours, complemented with 157.5 hours of related instruction. Currently, there is a range of different participating employers, ranging from the city and county of San Francisco to the Palo Alto networks. They are partnered with the City College of San Francisco, who is the local education agency partner that sanctions and assists in the development of the curriculum, which again is complementing the on-the-job training that is provided by the employers that hire on these apprentices. Lastly, just like SLO, all of this is built around the California Apprenticeship Initiative grant that helps offset some of the initial cost of developing this apprenticeship program.
So what is the construct of this gold standard model? The Apprenticeship Framework consists firstly of a template. So the basic fundamentals of the registered apprenticeship model consists of one of two areas. The first is the theoretical component consisting of related and supplemental instruction. The vast majority of our programs have roughly 144 recommended related and supplemental instruction hours per year. The second piece is the practical application component, which is on-the-job training. The majority of our programs have roughly 2,000 hours of on-the-job training annually per year, which is roughly the equivalent of full-time work. Lastly, all of our standards are built with a progressive wage scale. This allows an apprentice to move through the program, successfully complete certain competencies, and potentially be given an opportunity to have an increase in their salary over the course of 2, 3, or 4 periods, depending upon how the program is structured. The employer sets the wage, and they set the increases. The apprentice just needs to successfully complete those competencies. So delving more deeply into RSI, what is it? Essentially, it's approved curriculum specifically tailored to your operational needs. It instills a theoretical understanding for the apprentice so that they can then in turn go and practically apply what they've learned in the classroom the night before. Classes in many instances count towards a degree, either a 2 or 4 year degree in college. And then lastly, the delivery system consists of lectures provided through hands-on demonstrations, presentations, and examinations, in some cases proctored. Here's an illustration extrapolated directly from one of our approved standards for Information Security Analyst. This is a breakdown of some of the coursework that's offered that the apprentice will take during the duration of their apprenticeship program. On-the-job training. This is the practical application piece of our registered apprenticeship model. It allows for work processes to be established by you, so the employer determines the competencies for the program. It's a learn by doing model, a work-based model that can be integrated into your strategy. And then one of the highlights of the registered apprenticeship model is the mentorship component that allows for apprentices to be supervised in many instances by somebody who is already serving in the role in which they are apprenticing in. And then lastly, as I referenced on a prior slide, all of our apprenticeship programs are built around a progressive wage scale with wages set by you, the employer. Here, taken directly from our standards, is an example of some of the competencies, or what we call on-the-job training, focusing on the information security analyst. Here's an example of a progressive wage scale taken directly from one of our standards for the information security analyst role. It starts with the high-skilled worker wage of $47.95 per hour. The apprentice will start at about $33 an hour and will have the opportunity to get 4 separate increases throughout the duration of their apprenticeship program. The program, in this particular case, is built around a 2-year apprenticeship program. One of the first questions I'm asked when we develop a registered apprenticeship program for employers is, where am I going to get the skilled workers? Where are we going to source from? First and foremost, we always recommend that employers start with their own incumbent workforce. Why? Because in many instances, these individual employees have already checked a box for you. These are individuals who've been a part of your organization. They understand its mission, its goals. They have a strong orientation to the type of work that you do and understand the DNA of what makes your organization tick. In many instances, for that reason, they can be very strong candidates for your apprenticeship program. The second area that we encourage our employers to look to are our academic institutions throughout the state of California. We have strong ties to our academic institutions at the community college level, the California State University and UC system, and our adult schools and county offices of education. In many instances, these are students who are already taking classes in the apprenticeable occupations that you're looking to fill. The next area is industry displaced workers. These are individuals who had prior work experience in the IT space. Perhaps they were in a different type of role and they're looking for a route back into the sector, and the apprenticeship model allows them to get the specific training for the apprenticeable role that you're trying to bring into your organization. And finally, you have the public at large. These are individuals who are interested in moving into the information technology sector, but don't have the required academic or on-the-job training experience in order to meet the minimum qualifications for many of these roles.
Let's talk about pre-apprenticeship. Pre-apprenticeship is a term that is used loosely and has many different definitions. So in order to understand pre-apprenticeship, we must first define it. Pre-apprenticeships are programs that prepare individuals to enter and succeed in a registered apprenticeship program and then ultimately a viable career. Unlike registered apprenticeship programs that typically take a year or more and include paid on-the-job training, pre-apprenticeships are shorter in length, and they may last from a few weeks to a few months and may or may not include wages or stipends. Pre-apprenticeship programs have a direct link to at least one existing registered apprenticeship program through a memorandum of understanding or a linkage agreement, and provide career counseling, job search tips, and resume preparation that enables the pre-apprentices a pathway to employability through a registered apprenticeship program. However, the registered apprenticeship program should also emphasize that direct entry is not always guaranteed. Pre-apprenticeship programs can also prepare individuals for certificates, or at least place them in the position to be prepared for certificate examinations. Here's an illustration of what a pre-apprenticeship program looks like. This is the SLO partners in conjunction with the San Luis Obispo County Office of Education. This pre-apprenticeship program exposes pre-apprentices to occupations of their choice, ranging from software developer to IT networking. Their linkage is with SLO Partners Apprenticeship Committee that provides the possibility of an entry to their registered apprenticeship program. The length of this program is anywhere between 10 to 20 weeks, depending on the occupation the pre-apprentices decide to pursue. Lastly, all of this, again, is built around the California Apprenticeship Initiative grant that helps offset some of the initial cost of developing this pre-apprenticeship program. Apprentice benefits. Here's the good news for our registered apprentices. There's the opportunity to earn while they learn. While apprentices focus on their career path, they are working full-time and going to school. Apprentices are afforded the opportunities for regular pay increases, which instills a sense of accomplishment as they make their way through their apprenticeship program. Apprentices also learn lifelong skills. Apprentices earn competitive wages. They earn a paycheck from the first day of employment. And as skill levels increase, so do the incremental pay raises. At the end of the apprenticeship program, apprentices are certified as highly skilled and competent workers in their respected occupation. Once the apprentice has completed the apprenticeship program, they can earn state and potentially nationally recognized credentials. According to a 2018 LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report, 94% of employees say that they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their career development.
Next, I'd like to highlight the employer benefits. The first, of course, is your skilled workforce, the ability to attract, train, and retain a pipeline of skilled workers to allow for you to meet your operational needs. Secondly is the financial aspect of it, improvement in productivity and profitability, and the ability to access state and federal funding streams. This is very different when you have an internal training program. In many instances, you don't qualify for the same type of funding as you do with a registered apprenticeship program. Next, Sagai highlighted previously the loyalty that employees have toward the employer who's invested in their career development. So it instills a sense of trust. As a result of that, you have high retention rates. Speaking of high retention rates, it reduces recruitment costs and certainly high turnover costs associated with bringing in your workers. And then lastly, and perhaps one of the best elements of the registered apprenticeship program that I like to highlight consistently with employers is the element of the customization feature, the ability to really tailor the program to your specific operational needs, not only in the early development stages, but throughout the duration of the program that you have it embedded into your organization. We can change it as technology changes, as requirements of the industry change. The customization feature is perhaps one of the biggest selling points of the registered apprenticeship programs. According to an economic policy team at the Center for American Progress, 97% of sponsors of registered apprenticeship programs said that they would recommend this program to others. While 80% of the sponsors cited that the greatest benefit of the apprenticeship model was that it helped meet their demands for a skilled workforce. And then lastly, 64% of our program sponsors said that the completion rate for their program was between 90 to 100%, and 26% indicated it was between 70 to 89%. Let's talk about return on investment. According to the US Department of Labor, for every dollar that an employer invests in a registered apprenticeship program, they see a return of $1.47. Not only is there a return on investment for employers, but the public also sees a benefit. For every dollar that our government invests in registered apprenticeship programs, they see a return of $28. Speaking of strong statistically significant outcomes, 87% of our apprentices who complete registered apprenticeship programs are employed upon successful completion. And then lastly, of those individuals who do go through a registered apprenticeship program, on average, they earn over the course of their lifetime $300,000 more than their peers who did not go through a registered apprenticeship program. Next, let's talk about potential funding opportunities for your registered apprenticeship program. First is something very unique in our state. It's called Montoya Funds. No other state has it. These are dollars that are earmarked annually through our state budget. They come in the form of hours that are dispersed by the California Community College Chancellor's Office. They are distributed to each of the local education agencies that participate in registered apprenticeship. They have a reimbursable rate of roughly $6.50 per hour for every hour that the student is in school. When those funds are not available, we encourage our academic institutions to take full advantage of something called apportionment. These are funds that allow for the academic institution to claim the hours that the student is in class while they're in their registered apprenticeship program. Next is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. These are funds that are distributed through the workforce investment boards, and they focus on the support of on-the-job training components, and in many instances will pay for costs associated with classroom instruction. Next is the Employment Training Panel. Those dollars are really focused on incumbent worker upskilling, funds that can be earmarked for supporting of job creation and training for individuals who work in a workplace. And then lastly, something that we're very proud of, which is the apprenticeship grants that are focused on helping employers offset costs associated with the implementation of their registered apprenticeship programs. Over the last half decade or so, we've seen an unprecedented level of funding coming in from both the federal and state governments. These are dollars that have come in the form of a number of grants, most recently the California Apprenticeship Initiative grants that are funded through state dollars, and the Closing the Skills Gap, which are funded through the federal government. Our hope is that as we continue to navigate through the COVID-19 challenges economically and otherwise, that our employers are going to double down and put Californians back to work. Our hope is that we will continue to see those dollars invest in apprenticeship programs which successfully put people in jobs that employers need. So you're an employer and you've determined that you want to register an apprenticeship program. What are the steps that are critically important in order for you to make that happen? First, you'll be assigned to work with a strategic business advisor. A subject matter expert will help you navigate through the steps from beginning to end. The first thing you'll need to do is define your operational needs. That comes in the form of what positions do we need? Secondly, you'll bring in your subject matter experts who will itemize all of the critical components, including the competencies and related and supplemental instruction coursework essential for that job role. And then lastly, you, the employer, will establish the wage scale. That includes the progressive wage scale component from where an apprentice starts to where they end. Secondly, you'll identify your educational partner. This is important for a couple of reasons. First, you want to ensure that they have relevant curriculum that is specifically tied to the apprenticeable occupation role. So you will want to find an employer that has suitable curriculum, ideally already approved, and can deliver that curriculum. That may come in the form of a brick and mortar college or an online service provider. Secondly, you want to ensure that you have an employer that can determine potential opportunities for funding. That could be RSI hours that may be available that I referenced on my previous slide, or there's an interest in exploring with you the opportunity to develop a proposal for a grant. Many of our local education agencies have in-house grant writers that can do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. They will also provide to you a letter of support sanctioning your curriculum and agreeing to be your local education agency partner. Apprenticeship programs may have multiple local education agencies. In some instances, some represent the funding piece and some represent the curriculum piece. The next step is to identify where you're going to source your potential candidates. As I outlined on my prior slide, they can come from a multitude of places, some of which are indicated here. After that, you'll establish your standards. This is where a lot of the heavy lifting can be done for you. Our strategic business advisor will detail out from the template of their choosing, based on your operational needs, all of the critical components that are essential in order for you to establish an apprenticeship program that meets your needs. They will continue to monitor and help and assist along the way with the progression of that apprentice as well. And then lastly, the submission for approval. This is an area that I really want to highlight because we've done a lot of work to ensure that the turnaround time for approval of your program can range anywhere from 45 to 60 days. We've also streamlined our process in a number of other ways. The first is the establishment of the first of its kind in the country dual template. This is a template that allows for you to simultaneously register your apprenticeship program through both the federal and state government at the same time on one document. Why is this important? Because it allows for your apprentices to be recognized both at the federal and state level, and it also opens your organization up to the opportunity to secure funding through both federal grants as well as state grants. So we think, in conclusion, the solution is the apprenticeship model, which will meet industry needs for a high-skilled workforce. This is without regard to the occupation that you're looking to make apprenticeable. But in the case of cybersecurity, we have a real game-changing moment. With the integration of the new curriculum that's been adopted through the proposal from the Governor's Cybersecurity Task Force, we think we have a new opportunity for cybersecurity apprenticeship program development. My hope is that you will think so too. The Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Unit has field offices throughout the state of California. So whether you're an employer down in San Diego County, or up in Red Bluff, California, we have a field office of strategic business advisors that can work directly with you and your team to develop a registered apprenticeship program that's going to fit your operational needs. I hope that you will contact that local office at your earliest opportunity to start a discussion about ways that you can get the skilled workforce that you need. Lastly, we want to thank you for the opportunity to present today on the California Registered Apprenticeship Model. We are confident that the integration of this 21st century solution into your current recruitment strategies is going to benefit you by getting you the skilled workforce that you need now and in the future. On behalf of myself and my colleague, Sagai Arafane, thank you so much for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you.
So we've had a lot of activity in the Q&A section, and I'd like to go through a couple of the questions that have been asked. Thank you so much for participating. The first question we have is, we are a large employer with employees in multiple locations. If we want to implement a statewide program, what would that structure look like? One of the many exciting features about the state registered apprenticeship model is the ability, as I referenced in my presentation, to customize your apprenticeship standards. And this includes tailoring those standards to employers without regard to size. So if you are a large employer who has several employment hubs located throughout the state of California with different types of roles, that could essentially come in the form of partnerships with multiple local education agencies. We can create separate work processes that are specific to those individual employees who are getting different types of training, and we can tie that to the competencies to the academic requirements for the program as well. And that means working with local education partners in the region who can deliver that necessary curriculum. The next question we have is, can nonprofits also participate in hiring apprentices? And the question is yes. You can develop a registered apprenticeship program for your nonprofit organization in the same way that a revenue generating organization does. Again, the same rules apply. You have an interest in developing skills for a workforce and bringing in candidates to get the necessary training required. So you would set up curriculum, on-the-job training, and tie that to your standards. And so absolutely nonprofits can participate. We have successfully developed partnerships with nonprofit organizations in our state, and we encourage nonprofits to look to the registered apprenticeship model to build their skilled workforce. Another question is, can we have a cohort with both internal employees and candidates from the outside. So essentially what would be a hybrid cohort? And the answer to that question is yes. Again, the ability to really customize your specific operational needs includes identification of suitable candidates within your organization. In many instances, those could be candidates who are serving in different types of roles and are interested in moving into a targeted classification, potentially IT or cybersecurity. You would put them through that same vetting process and give them the opportunity to learn the competencies and the corresponding academic requirements associated with that particular role. It also gives you the ability to look outside. As I mentioned in my presentation, we have a number of ways in which our employers look to find suitable external candidates, and they include working with our academic institutions. We have strong ties with our academic institutions throughout the state of California. We have students in classes in many instances who are taking coursework associated with that type of apprenticeable role. We also have individuals, as I alluded to in my presentation, who have previously been in IT, in the case of IT roles, and are looking for an opportunity to get back into the IT community, into perhaps a different type of role. And then again, lastly, individuals who have never been, in the case of IT, in that type of role, but are looking to find a mechanism to be able to move into a career pathway in information technology. One of the things that I think I wanted to highlight is that when we look to candidates who are not in those particular roles or have not previously served in those particular roles, it gives a unique opportunity to look toward underrepresented communities, particularly communities who may not have had access to resources, academic opportunities, or on-the-job training experiences. And it creates a more well-rounded cohort with diversity. And so oftentimes with our employers, we certainly encourage them to look from within, but it also opens up a unique opportunity to look outside and secure talent for individuals who have an aptitude for learning but simply don't have the required requirements of the minimum qualifications for that role. And then lastly, we have a question from Vijay. He said, what are the prerequisites for a state registered apprenticeship program, and does the apprenticeship program subsequently translate to full-time or full-term employment? I think I outlined a number of the prerequisites that are tied to what is required for the model, but essentially it is a theoretical component in the form of related and supplemental instruction, typically about 144 hours annually, complemented by that experiential on-the-job training or work-based learning component that allows them to get the practical application of what they've learned, in many instances in the classroom the night before. And then yes, our goal as a unit, as a division, is to find viable career pathways that lead to full-time employment in good paying jobs that bring individuals up into the middle class and beyond, and create a career pathway that allows them to provide for themselves and for their families, and in turn help our employers be successful and competitive in their particular space as well.
Now I'd like to introduce our third keynote speaker, Shamla Nedu, Managing Partner of IBM Security, former Global CISO, IBM.
Thank you, Linda. So you've heard a lot of really valuable information from the speakers before me. What I want to do is I want to take that and make it real. And so what I'm going to do right now is I want to talk about my own experiences, both in leading some of these programs, as well as benefiting from many of the programs you've heard about today. So let me start by telling you about some people I know. Each of them was a member of my extended cybersecurity team. I'm going to change a few details like their names to protect their privacy. But I want to share information just for you to see and make it absolutely real. So let's start with Alice. Alice was a financial auditor who wanted to be a cybersecurity specialist. But who's going to hire a financial auditor to do a cybersecurity job? She didn't have the skills. She didn't have the prerequisites. She didn't have the 5 to 10 years of experience that so many jobs seem to require. She needed a chance to develop the necessary skills. But most importantly, she needed someone to give her that break to enter this field. She found it at IBM, in my team. She got a chance to follow her heart. We helped her to build up her skills from scratch. And after 2 years on the job, discovered a major vulnerability piece of well-known commercial software from a very large and very popular vendor. We paid millions of dollars for that software, as did many other companies. And after discovering this vulnerability, she was engaging with the software community, with the software company to explain her methods. She just needed that first opportunity. And with that opportunity, she excelled beyond expectations. She was grateful for the opportunity, and we remain grateful for her contribution. Her colleague, Diego, had just returned from military service. He had lots of experience in tactical operations, but none in cybersecurity. He learned on the job at IBM. He excelled in ways that surprised himself and surprised people who knew him, but he earned the respect of highly skilled experts in his team. Let's meet Reika. Reika earned a PhD in computer science. She had a rewarding career. 20 years ago, she dropped out of the workplace to go raise her family. When her kids grew up and left home, she wanted to head back to the workplace. Unfortunately, her skills were 20 years out of date. She struggled to even land an interview. We hired her at IBM, and now she's one of the best researchers we have ever hired. And so I tell you these stories to make a point. Typically, leaders hire for skill and experience. Job descriptions read like laundry lists of requirements, 10 years of this, 5 years of that. And frankly, it's not working. There are only so many people with 10 years experience in most recent technologies. Sometimes we ask for 10 years experience in a technology that hasn't even been around for that long. And so, we have not been able to manage the skills for the last decade. And in fact, over time, it's gotten worse. If we all hire that way, we'll never develop the necessary skills in the kinds of volumes we need. And what happens to communities represented by people like Diego or Alice or Reika? What happens to their families? They are effectively shut out of the cybersecurity job market. And frankly, we can't afford that, not only because of them, but because the problem for CISOs is that there's a shortage of skills in the field. And the shortage has been recognized by cybersecurity experts and leaders for years. And it's increasingly being recognized within the broader business community. And you heard here that it is even being recognized at the highest levels of government. And there's no relief from this very real, very serious problem. And yet, we as CISOs are still expected to secure companies. We are expected to keep up while innovation shows no sign of slowing down. And CEOs want continuous and sustained business growth. And for the most part, the only way you get that is by introducing and implementing a larger digital footprint, which naturally increases the cybersecurity problem. And on top of all that, our responsibilities have increased significantly. As the world becomes more digital, we are increasing our digital footprint, we are increasing our reliance on advanced technologies, and therefore we are increasing our exposure to attack. We need more qualified people to do the work, and more importantly, to secure our digital future. So how are we going to do this? Right? Many of us look to NIST for guidance, and while the NIST framework has designed for US critical infrastructure, it has quickly become an accepted guide, an operating model for delivering secure outcomes, even in commercial enterprises. The 5 major areas of the NIST framework kind of guides us to make sure we have, a section or a category to identify risk. Risk to our people, risk to our digital assets. There's a section for protect. How do we build safeguards to proactively protect our digital assets and limit the harm? We have to build capability around detection. How do we find the cyber events before a catastrophic event actually happens? We have to build capabilities around responding. How will our organizations react to an attack? How would we get more organized? How would we get more efficient, etc.? Recovery is another really big topic that sits on every CISO's agenda, which is how will we return to regular business operations after a catastrophic cyber event? And so that list of responsibilities, those areas of focus, need skilled staff. Even when you have the best innovation, you have the best technology, you need skilled people. They make up the backbone of our security programs. And so what kind of skills do they really need? When I think about cybersecurity skills, I think of them in two separate groups. The first of them is just direct cybersecurity skills, like security risk analysts, security engineers, cybersecurity incident response analysts, threat intelligence analysts, etc. And the list goes on. These are very traditional security roles, and they support security goals. There's a whole other category of skills that we need to build for. They are vital to the cybersecurity ecosystem, but they are often overlooked. Think about non-security specializations. For example, your CPA, they need to develop skills to learn how to handle things like your bank details securely. It's not part of a typical CPA's job, but they now need to develop those skills. School registrars, they need to know how to maintain student privacy. They have to meet compliance mandates, federal law, state law, etc. Even the person handling the cash register at the department store needs to know how to handle your credit card information or your personal information while you're paying for an item. And these skills are often overlooked, but as these roles become more digitally enabled, the need for appropriate skills, whether you call them cybersecurity skills or just security skills within other job skills, will expand. Everything is connected, from your cars to your cameras, to your washer and dryer, to your digital pacemakers. The need for cybersecurity roles will just continue to expand. And in order for society to work, all of us need to learn how to perform our duties in a secure way. And success is about talent. Talent is about skilled people. And so I think while we look for specialty, we should also be looking more broadly. How do we increase the cybersecurity IQ of our societies? So right here today, what can we do? You are all experts in your field. You're front and center of what we can do if we can partner together. We can convene, we can share ideas, we can discuss, we can debate, and that's all great, and we've heard a lot of that here today. But when we leave here, we have to go act. So what are we gonna do? I say we go be bold and we go take risks. I did that. As the global CISO firm, I relinquished the idea of skill and experience as the single measure of talent. And what I did instead was said, let's look for attitude and aptitude in our candidates. With the right aptitude, you can learn. With the right attitude, you will learn. And so once we hired candidates with the right aptitude and the right attitude, we used internal methods to develop their natural talents. Let me share a little bit more about what we did. But before I go there, schools and educational institutions are augmenting methods, they're augmenting contact. And at many schools, you cannot graduate without taking required technology-related classes. And when I teach, I tell my law students, you cannot litigate subject matter that you don't understand. So similarly, for cybersecurity practitioners, you cannot secure what you don't understand. And so one of my key focus areas is on developing subject matter skills. Before we get to security, we need to build subject matter skills. Now, schools, higher education, independent training programs, on-the-job training, apprenticeships, all have a role to play in workforce development. But security leaders are looking for new hires who understand how they fit into commercial enterprises, or any enterprise, how their role interfaces with other technology functions, how their functions create business value to the companies. And so a lot of that is about context. And some challenges that hiring managers face. Most new hires don't know how to apply the conceptual knowledge that they gain into business processes. And conceptual skills may not always translate to specific security outcomes that are needed in the workplace. Cybersecurity programs are most successful when security is part of every role. And as I said, the cybersecurity IQ needs to be elevated. So let me talk about how we address these challenges at IBM. We did what every company does at first. We hired from other companies, we brought in summer interns, we hired college graduates into entry-level roles, etc. But to build teams at scale, 8,000 cybersecurity professionals, 80,000 developers, and hundreds of thousands of other technology professionals takes much more than the regular recruiting actions. We did some things, we did some creative things, we did some things very early on. Let me share some of those. So instead of hiring white-collar workers, like people would hire blue-collar workers, IBM coined the term new-collar workers. And these are workers that have no formal degree, but they are able to do a particular job. They might have skill, they might have experience, they might have knowledge, but they can do the job. So we took the position that no degree, no problem. You can still work for us. Second thing we did this very early on. I want to say at the beginning of this decade, so 2018, IBM pioneered a program called Pathways to Technology. The program was redesigned, high school curriculum, so students who follow the specialized curriculum will fulfill the requirements of both a high school diploma and an industry-recognized associate's degree upon graduation. So you come out of high school, you have an associate's degree, you have knowledge that you've gained in that curriculum, as well as met the requirements for a high school degree or diploma. And that means you come out of graduation and you qualify immediately for meaningful employment right out of high school. Of course, we hope that those students and those graduates will continue to four-year degrees and other further education, but whether they do so or not, they still have a head start. Today, we have over 200 schools and over 200 colleges in over 24 countries in this program. Most of them are located in underserved communities. But wait, that wasn't enough. IBM went even further. We realized the skills needed by the workforce of the future are changing rapidly. Technology skills have a very short life. And companies need to think differently about how we prepare the workforce of tomorrow. And we have to navigate that balance between the short shelf life of the skills and how we prepare the workforce of tomorrow. And so the digital future with artificial intelligence, for example, is expected to change all jobs in some ways. The responsibility has shifted to companies to train workers and to create apprenticeships to fill the void in workforce learning. In my experience, my observation, apprenticeships are one of the most successful types of work-based learning. It's making a choice to build your skills versus to buy your skills. We chose to build. Rather than to compete in a very tight labor market for cybersecurity skills, we created a prescribed learning journey, including some theory and foundational knowledge and subject matter expertise and skills. And then the apprentice joins an on-the-job learning program where they learn the job role, they develop competencies and skills, while they're also becoming proficient in the specific role. In this way, we build the workforce that we need. When our business shifts and pivots, our workforce can shift and pivot because we can just go back and we can augment our program. This method is not without significant effort. My peers tell me that they are already short on resources. They are already short on skills. They cannot dedicate limited resources to teaching these inexperienced people, no matter what their attitude or aptitude is. Well, we have two choices as practitioners. We can dedicate the resources and create the talent, or we can partner with others to dedicate the resources and create the talent. But we cannot not create the talent. We've seen the benefits to the employer. I have been a beneficiary of the benefits of such programs and such thinking. We at IBM are currently graduating about 400 apprentices a year, and we have been doing that for a couple of years. Started off slowly and has accelerated over years. And out of those apprentice graduates, we have hired over 90% of them permanently. We benefit as a company essence, that solves part of our skills gap. But let's just think about it from the other side. Let's look at what's in it for the apprentice. If you're a prospective apprentice, let me tell you what are some things that you should look forward to. You build very marketable skills. Because remember, we are teaching skills of the future. So you build marketable skills, you will earn while you learn. Most of our apprenticeships are very short, they're 1 year. A few could last as much as 18 to 24 months, but that's a very short path to a very long career. The apprenticeships are registered with the US Department of Labor, so the apprentices get the benefit of having that agency OV and look out for their best interest. The point is that these apprenticeships are real and they can meet the tests that comes all the way from places like the US Department of Labor. Our current apprentices range in age from 19 to 59. We've got people in the program, everyone from someone who was a barista at the Starbucks to a dairy farmer. And I think my point is that there's a lot of opportunity. There are no tests and no exams to qualify to get into these apprenticeship programs. Of course, there are some things that we do want. Let me tell you that's what you will get. Let me tell you what we would expect in return. An appetite for learning, a passion for technology, determination to succeed. You gotta bring your energy. You gotta be creative in problem solving. You gotta thrive in teams. And you have to have the ability to adapt and pivot as the market changes. And if you're willing to take ownership of that, it is not so hard to qualify for our apprenticeships. So let me talk about how I did that, right? In my own team, we created such a program. Let me tell you how we made this work. We structured the teams for optimal learning. We created small teams, 8 to 10 people who co-located, and whether they were working together in an open plan office or in a cafeteria or in a conference room, they worked together. Everything was done together. The idea was that half of the team were highly experienced and the other half were people like, as I talked about, Reika and Diego and others. The team stayed together while the work changed. Accomplishments belonged to the team rather than to individuals. And so that created an environment for accelerated learning, but it also created the incentive for sharing and, the teamwork and the collaboration. Some results we saw. In the first 90 days, we saw a distinct reduction in productivity. And that was expected. It was an investment I was willing to make. The company supported that approach. And the idea was that we knew we were going to make that investment and we were going to reduce our productivity. So we lost about 30% of our productivity in the first 90 days. And that is of those experienced, skilled people as well. What we found, though, that is in the next 90 days, our productivity kind of got closer and closer to what we would expect from a, regular team. Over the third quarter, the next 90 days, we found us accelerating beyond the expected productivity of teams. And a couple things I think that created that outcome for us was the commitment. People who are given such opportunities will give you both loyalty, commitment. When they bring that passion, they bring the team spirit, they bring their energy, and the teamwork and problem solving together creates cultures that naturally lend themselves to increased productivity. So what we actually saw is even though we sacrificed in those first few months, we were able to make up the ground in further months. And frankly, ever since, we are now looking at those teams. The results are tangible, the results are measurable, and we have got both retention and increased productivity. And now those teams are converting to becoming really high-performing teams. And so, I feel very fortunate I was able to be a beneficiary of those kinds of constructs. But, I'd be remiss if I didn't call out the fact that there are more social benefits out of such a construct. Multiple programs have been set up over the past few years to address the skill shortages, from academic specialty programs, certifications, accreditations, vocational training, to these apprenticeships. And all have helped in different ways, but still marketable cybersecurity skills are in short supply. And so the industry needs a better, faster way to attract, develop, and retain suitable talent. We have enormous opportunity here, and I think I heard it from some of the other speakers. We have enormous opportunity to address the skill shortage, while we also address the social inequity and the limited professional opportunity that exists in some communities. Providing job opportunities in underserved and underemployed communities will reduce the critical skill shortage, and it will generate value for companies like me, but it will also generate value for communities and dignity for individuals. And this will be a positive outcome for all parties. And so I urge you all to not let this opportunity pass. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your informative session, Shamla. I have a reminder for all of you, please use the Q&A if you have any questions. That's where you're going to want to place them. Next, I'm excited to introduce our segment with employer panelists, and Brenda Bridges-Cruz, Deputy Director, Office of Professional Development with the California Department of Technology, will be our facilitator for this panel.
Hi, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Linda. I hope you're all enjoying this conference and finding the information you've heard thus far beneficial. Thank you, Shamla, for that engaging and insightful discussion. I would now like to introduce our employer panelists. We have with us today Julie Witten, the Assistant Deputy Secretary of Innovation and Accountability at the Government Operations Agency. Peter Liebert is the Commander at the California State Cyber Guard Cyber Operations and the Chief Information Security Officer at Cerner Government Services. Isabel Casillas Guzman is the Director over the Office of the Small Business Advocate at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Nick Curry is the Senior Program Manager over the Military Programs at Amazon Web Services. And Stephen Dodd is an IBM Certified Project Executive at IBM Public Partnerships. This first question is for all of the panelists. Given the current and projected future shortfall of qualified cybersecurity personnel in the workforce, what are you and your organizations doing to address these skills gaps? And can you please talk about the types of skills, education, and experience you are looking for in a hire?
So that's easy. We're developing a cybersecurity apprenticeship program. The state of California realizes that apprenticeship programs are an important part of our workforce strategy and succession plans by providing a pathway into our hard-to-fill positions such as cybersecurity, information technology, healthcare, and financial services. So in addition, if your organization is like the state of California and you're looking for ways to increase diversity and inclusion, I encourage you to start an apprenticeship program. We're investing in our employees by providing them with another upward mobility opportunity. And apprenticeship programs opens up entry-level jobs by providing lower wage earners an opportunity to increase their knowledge and skills and apply them to our organization. I was interested in hearing what Shamla had to say because we have similar experiences where we have employees with financial services backgrounds, but they also have an IT aptitude and they bring a different set of skills to the teams. So this may be just the person we need when we begin to update a financial services program within our organization, or an auditor with an IT aptitude may be looking for an opportunity to contribute to our organization as a cybersecurity auditor. Same with project managers and analysts. If you're looking to reduce a focus within one area of your organization and invest in another, an apprenticeship program can be implemented to keep your talent as you upskill and retrain your workforce.
Isabel, would you like to answer the question next?
Sure, of course. Thank you for having me on this panel. This is highly interesting. Of course, I bring the small business perspective. I have the pleasure of leading on small business and innovative startups in the state of California, where we have 4.1 million small businesses who we know are drivers of economic growth. 2/3 of net new jobs are actually started by small businesses. They employ nearly half of the private sector. So it's over 7 million workers in the state. And in California, they represent 99.8% of all businesses in the state. Amazingly, most of those are under 20 employees, over nearly 99% of those. So I like to share these numbers just to level set. I know many of you may have heard them, but just to remind us all of the size of the market when we think about small business and the potential cyber demands that they might have in this environment, especially. There was a recent study pre-COVID, which found that 1/3 of companies under 50 employees, so nearly all of the small businesses, reported using free consumer cybersecurity products for their businesses. And 1/5 of them reported that they did not have endpoint security. In fact, 43% of small business owners had no established cybersecurity defense plans, and 66% surveyed believe cyber attacks would not even affect them. So it's not surprising. It's what we find across all disaster preparedness generally for small businesses in terms of their belief that it's going to affect them or their need to plan. But in the case of cyber, I understand that nearly 2/3 of small businesses were actually affected by a cyber attack in 2019 of some sort. So the reasons for the resistance to preparedness or the ability to really expand and adopt good cyber health is just that small businesses oftentimes lack the knowledge or the resources, or they're wearing multiple hats, dealing with multiple marketplace issues and pressures. So they have limited capacity and less incentives, frankly, to focus on cyber as they staff up or balance needs to start and grow. However, I just wanted to call attention that there are external factors that are changing this reality. Including increased policy, advocacy, and education broadly. I know I've put it as a priority across my grant programs for small business technical assistance that cybersecurity should be prioritized. In addition, there's just consumer pressures. Small businesses feel that negative backlash on data breaches as well and don't want to be part of that narrative. And then, of course, there are supply chain pressures for small businesses who are in procurement. And so whether it's the federal acquisitions pressures to comply or HIPAA or just high corporate standards, they feel the pressure to, in order to get contracts to comply. And then, of course, we've seen during COVID, there's increased exposure online via e-commerce with these higher adoption rates of technology that we've seen. So arguably, most small businesses are likely not hiring the cyber workforce directly. It's important to flag this just because they will be outsourcing IT. And hopefully as education increases and market pressures increase, those demands will increase as well for external cyber courts of sorts. And that's increased B2B opportunities for smaller firms providing those services to small businesses. And the heavier demand will likely fall more on the monitoring, follow-up types of activities. So just they need somebody who could just help them be good stewards of their systems, truly. And so for those, and for those small business employers who are fortunate enough to see the strong growth to justify their own workforce, I think it's just like any of the large employers we'll probably hear from on the panel. Once a small business gets a good employee, they're going to hold on to them and really try to instead level them up with the right training to meet their cyber demands. So they might have a small company office manager, IT person, who they want to keep and grow as they grow. And so they're really going to rely on the education systems and these programs for stackable certifications so their employee can grow as the firm grows. So I am hopeful that by increasing workforce capacity broadly with the demands that we're seeing in the state, that will also meet the small business needs as they're further looking at their cyber health during this time and now more than ever where they really need it.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. And Peter, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead. Feel free.
Yeah, just around, so we're asking what your organization is doing to address the cybersecurity skills gap, and what types of skills and education and experience are you looking for in a hire?
First, thanks for allowing me to be on this panel. This is great. One of the key things that we're doing, and I'm going to speak from both the CERN perspective as well as my role is in the California State Guard perspective, is that we really like to tap the veteran community, and I think we'll probably touch on this a little bit more, in order to really fill out the jobs that we need. I mean, for Cerner, for example, we value the veteran skill set, above many other other opportunities that we see folks come in for, mainly because the skills that they learn in the military directly translate over to a lot of the positions within Cerner. And I know, for example, that there are several things that we offer veterans coming in to help them transition into those roles and fill our skill gap, such as the employer support of the Guard and Reserve Award. We received that for our participation with both Guard and the Reserve. We provide supplemental military pay for those that are still in the Guard or Reserve within our organization. We also participate in the Army Pays program, which is a partnership for youth success, as well as the Hiring Heroes program. So those are all things that we leverage to help veterans get into Cerner. But it really goes beyond those highlights. If you just, for example, just go to the Cerner website, which is the careers.cerner.com/military, you'll see something which is interesting I haven't really seen before. And at the bottom of that webpage, you'll see a little search bar that you can put in your military MOS, and it automatically converts over all of your skill sets to jobs that align within the Cerner career network. So, for example, if you're a cyber person and you have a 25D or 17C MOS, you type that in, you get like 30 to 50 jobs that align with that skill set that you could immediately translate over your military experience and fit that. So that's really kind of helping bridge the divide between the two organizations. And from a State Guard perspective, for those that are not familiar with the California State Guard, it's a volunteer organization that provides support to the California National Guard and wherever the governor may deem necessary in support of emergencies. And we have a cyber operations unit in there that helps augment the Guard capabilities, as well as provide support on the ground during disasters. Our primary source of talent for the State Guard has been military folks and veterans volunteering to join our organization. And it doesn't matter when you actually left the organization or left the military. In many cases, I have people that 15, 20 years since they put on a military uniform, they can directly translate over their rank in most cases, and wear the uniform again, but work under California to help support California's state missions. And from a cyber perspective, that's what we're doing there as well. And your skill set certainly will help that. So that's a quick rundown on the two organizations.
Thank you for that, Peter. I believe we have Nick on the call now. Hi, Nick.
Thank you. Hi, thanks. So I have a veteran lens on what we're going to talk about today. So the veteran and the military spouse experience in cyber or IT in general doesn't always translate into the ability for us to offer an impactful role immediately as a civilian during their transition. The technology, the culture, and even some of the skills needed can be different from what they experience in the military. So the way Amazon's opted to try and solve for this is with upskilling in our apprenticeship program. Amazon last year, as part of our $700 million commitment to upskilling, expanded our Amazon Technical Apprenticeship, which is a Department of Labor certified program that offers paid intensive classroom training and on-the-job apprenticeships with Amazon. What this does is allow veterans and military spouses who are great cultural fits with Amazon to be able to learn on the job and bridge the technical skills gap from their military careers to the private sector. With regards to the skill sets that we look for, the military community is composed of individuals from different cultures and backgrounds, experiences, personalities, a number of things. And because of all these, the veterans and the military spouses that we hire at Amazon bring diverse perspectives, great leadership skills to our civilian roles. Additionally, this community also has a great bias for action and a really strong desire to innovate on behalf of our customers.
Great, thank you, Nick. Now I believe we have Stephen on the call. Hi, Stephen, can you hear me?
Hi, good morning, Brenda. I'm well. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize for the communication problem this morning. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be part of this convening this morning and to have an opportunity to discuss IBM's Registered Apprenticeship Program. I'm going to re-emphasize some of the points that Shani made, but I'm going to start by going back to where our apprenticeship program started from and why apprenticeships at IBM. The answer really comes down to what Shani touched upon, that is supply versus demand, and do we build or we buy talent? I was part of the prior administration's 21st Century Apprenticeship Initiative to expand apprenticeship across non-traditional industries such as information technology. This initiative was very timely because it also coupled with what Shani noted in our new collar program that we started back in 2017-2018. And as Shani noted, our new collar program are those jobs where we don't require a 4-year degree. We're looking for talent, we're looking for skills, we're not looking for the degree. And this 21st Century Apprenticeship Initiative, along with IBM's initiative New Collar Jobs, provide an opportunity for IBM to actually open that pipeline aperture and develop our apprenticeship program. Now, as we all know, the skills needed by our current workforce that we all talked about today are changing rapidly. We also know that IT skills are perishable with a relatively short shelf life. So employers like us, we need to think about a different way to prepare the workforce of tomorrow, and the responsibility has shifted over to employers to address these skills gaps, especially given the demand for cyber skills that we've been talking about this morning. And work-based learning is one of the workforce tools IBM is using to address the skills gap. And our apprenticeship program has provided IBM an opportunity to change our workforce strategy and to grow our own talent. One of the first steps and keys to success of our apprenticeship program was that we initially reviewed all our job positions we have inside IBM, and we looked at the requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities of each of those positions and decided which one of those positions could we hire somebody without a 4-year degree. Once we went through that exercise, we were then able to identify these positions that would be appropriate for an apprenticeship job role. In fact, if you look today at IBM Jobs website, you will notice that most of the jobs now show a requirement for a high school diploma. We are looking for skills over degrees. Skills are now the driving factor to hire. So where are we today? Shani noted a few statistics, and I'd like to give a few more. IBM Apprenticeship Journey is now in its 3rd year, and we have come a long way since our initial cohort of 7 software engineers in October 2017. Today, we have over 500 apprentices across 25 registered apprenticeship roles across 12 states. We have apprenticeship roles in data scientists, which actually is a new ONET code that we had to open up. We have cybersecurity. We have software engineering, mainframe system administration. We have lab technicians. We have network support. We have 25 roles registered with the Department of Labor. And because they're registered with the Department of Labor, this allows us to take those registrations and hire apprentices anywhere across the U.S. And where it's applicable, we will work with that workforce state agency, as in the case of California DAS. One program I'd like to mention, because we'll talk cybersecurity today, is our Cybersecurity Apprenticeship Program at the IBM Rocket Center in West Virginia. There we have developed a very robust cybersecurity apprenticeship program and we actually have a lab where our cybersecurity apprentices can develop their cyber skills, competencies, and learn as they actually work on lab exercises. So not only does apprenticeship offer us the opportunity to open the talent pipeline, but also provides an opportunity for employers to address and offer opportunities to underrepresented minorities. In fact, our statistic today of the 500 apprentices we have on board, we have over 50% are underrepresented minorities, 29% are women, and 12% are veterans. As Shani noted, our apprentices range from 19 to 59, and we have currently have 2 patents filed on ideas from our apprentices. As Shamla noted, our plan is to continue and grow our apprenticeship program in the next few years and to continue and institutionalize apprenticeship as part of IBM's workforce talent pipeline. Brenda, back to you.
Hi, thank you, Stephen. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the follow-up question for you. Is that, can you discuss how IBM is working with federal and state government agencies, institutes of higher education, non-government organizations, community-based organizations, and industry partners to grow and scale apprenticeship opportunities?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brenda. So at IBM, we view apprenticeships as a workforce program that all of us can benefit from. And as employers, when we develop our own talent, we're not then competing with each other for the same talent and limited talent that we have out there. If we build the talent together, we're building the talent that we all need. And so what I do is partnership with employers, government agencies, institutes of higher education, non-government organizations, and community-based organizations to address the skills gaps head on. By working together, we can really address the skills and the talent that we need across all industries, but in IT jobs. If we don't do this, then the conversation we're having today, we're going to have the same conversation in 3, 5, 10 years' time. So it's time to act, as everybody said. This is the time for all of us to take this initiative. So what are we doing to share our apprenticeship leadership knowledge? So part of my job is to curate public-private partnerships with government agencies, CBOs, NGOs, and institutes of higher education, as well as industry's partners, so we can scale and expand apprenticeships, not only in California, but across the U.S. Last year, as Kelly Mackey mentioned earlier, is that we partnered with the state of California and American River College, and they adopted IBM apprenticeship standards for mainframe system administration, software engineering, and application development. And we were able to, because those standards were adopted through DAS, we were able to come a workforce apprenticeship program for the California Department of Technology's Franchise Tax Board and Department of Motor Vehicles. This partnership leveraged all the work from American River College, the California DAS, IBM, and the other state agencies to come together and implement a program to address the skills shortage today and in the future, the demand in the future, and develop that pipeline today. This is a model that can be easily replicated on many apprenticeship roles, both in public and private industries. Another example I'd like to talk about that we just closed on this week that we're going to move forward on is that we're working with another NGO, non-government organization, the Urban Institute, and with Franklin Apprenticeships, an intermediary, where IBM clients, mainframe clients across the U.S. will actually hire apprentices, and all the administrative work will be done by Franklin Apprenticeships. The funding for all the related technical instruction, or RSI in California, will all be funded by a program through the Department of Labor through United Urban Institute. The apprenticeship work and all that administration by Franklin Apprenticeship allows employers then just to hire apprentices in the jobs that they want them for in their locations, and without doing all the overhead, without doing the standards. And this then allows the employees to focus on hiring and develop a program through the work-based program and have mentors to work with the apprentices and have them do the job. All that administration is done by an intermediary, and in the case of California, you have Kelly Mackey and the DAS team to do all that for you as well. So the point being is that what we need to do, we need to have employers just hire apprentices. Let's see what we can do to alleviate all the administrative overhead. And with DAS and with intermediaries, you can do that, and then just employers hire the apprentices. Another major partnership I'd like to talk about is a new program out that's just been released by U.S. Department of Labor in the VETS section. This program allows, has set up what they're calling transition servicemen, and what Peter and Nick talked about on hiring veterans is this program starts before one becomes a veteran. And as someone is a transitioning service member, the pilot program has 4 bases on the East Coast and 4 bases on the West Coast. But the VET program with the DOL now has apprenticeship placement counselors on these 8 bases. And employers like us, and all of us here, right, and all agencies can work directly with these apprenticeship placement counselors who work with the TAP programs on these bases. And those opportunities that you may have to hire apprentices, you can actually work with the apprenticeship placement counselor on these bases and find the talent before they leave and transition from the military. I think it's a great program. We're going to take advantage of it. We're going to use it with the other program image with our other clients. But I really view this as it's a great way to start them off in the pre-apprenticeship program and go out there and find that talent as they exit. That with veterans is just a wonderful population. So Brenda, that's what we're doing today. We're going to continue to share our artifacts, our knowledge, whatever we can do to support the growth of apprenticeships. Back to you, Brenda.
Great, thank you, Stephen. And that was a lot of great information. And speaking of the veterans, I want to go back to Nick to ask how you and your company are helping members of the military community find employment in the tech field.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a great question. As a veteran myself, it's great pleasure for me to be able to give back to the members of the military community. And Amazon participates in several hiring and onboarding programs, both through public-private partnerships and ones that we've developed on our own. The goal is to bring in members of the military community into technical roles. Also, Amazon has invested in a number of programs and initiatives to continue making Amazon an even better place to work and stay employed for the military community, including tailored onboarding efforts. We have mentors and customized learning and development plans for both employees and managers. Some of the additional examples that we do for our employees is we offer a military mentorship program that provides any service member or military spouse access to a military mentor to guide them during their first year within Amazon in whatever role they're in. We also participate in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Hiring Our Heroes Corporate Fellowship Program and the Military Spouse Fellowship Program. These programs, if you're not aware of them, offer the opportunity for members of the military community to gain valuable hands-on experience in our work environment and is a really great, valuable, very good hiring tool for us. AWS has a military apprenticeship program that helps the community gain technical skill sets through on-the-job training, as I mentioned before. And you don't have to have any technical experience or degree for many of our apprenticeship programs. As part of the apprenticeship program, the training is anywhere from 10 to 20 weeks of related instruction, followed by up to 12 months of on-the-job training. Both the instructor-led training and the on-the-job training are paid, and you're actually hired before we start you in the program. We also have developed specific training curriculum for non-veteran managers that are going to be leading veterans to ensure that our leaders are aware of the unique aspects of having veterans or military spouses on their teams.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nick. So along the lines of the apprenticeship programs, Julie, can you speak to how the state is using apprenticeship programs?
Sure. Thank you, Brenda. First of all, I'd like to share with you that the public sector work is for people who want to make a difference and those who want to solve large, complex problems. So we're looking for people with analytical skills to solve those complex problems and those with other soft skills such as critical thinking, creativity, and communication skills with the ability to clearly communicate an issue or a solution to a person with an IT or non-IT background, and those with a desire and willingness to learn new skills. And I know some of these are the ones that David Rustine also referred to earlier. So we're looking for people with some education and experience and those with some degrees. The state of California has over 2,000 IT jobs available. If you or someone you know that has been recently impacted by COVID-19 and lost a job or need a new job with benefits, you can find our job openings on the Cal Careers website. Just Google CAL Careers, all one word, and click on Get a State Job. I'm sure you can find an IT job you're interested in, and we encourage you to ask your students to apply for these jobs. Public sector work is rewarding and gives an opportunity to support our fellow Californians. So over the past few years, the state began to develop apprenticeship programs for hard-to-fill positions. For healthcare, we started an LVN to RN program, and in 2017, we started a program for IT network services. This program provides over 20 community college credits, on-the-job training, weekly study sessions with a professor, digital badge training, a career development workshop, boot camps, and sample tests to prepare for the CCENT certificate. The exam and certificate are also paid for. We dually registered the Network Services Program with the U.S. Department of Labor and the state's Division of Apprenticeship Standards. About 6 months later, we started the Help Desk Services Apprenticeship Program, and this program is also dually registered and provides apprentices with all the similar benefits with college coursework and the ability to earn the CompTIA A+ certification. Upon completion, our apprentices receive a U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship certificate, as well as one from the state of California. When I asked some of our earlier apprentices why they were interested in the program, the number one response I heard is that they wanted to obtain on-the-job training. Some of our employees had previously taken some classes, but they needed the on-the-job training to be more competitive. Upon successful completion of the program, many departments with apprentices in the program have qualified applicants to fill their hard-to-recruit jobs. As Kelly mentioned, we now have the LVN to RN IT Network Services, IT Help Desk Services, and as Stephen Dodd referred to as the ITZ Systems Mainframe Apprenticeship Program that we partnered with IBM on this past year. And then we also started a financial services program. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're developing a cybersecurity apprenticeship program. So we partnered closely with many organizations to develop these programs. Some of our key partners include Mission College, San Francisco City College, Sacramento City College, American River College, California State University, Fresno, the California Community College Chancellor's Office, with the New World of Work digital badge curriculum, California Labor Agency, the U.S. Department of Labor, California Department of Technology, California Department of Human Resources, our labor partners such as SEIU Local 1000, industry partners Cisco, IBM, and others. These partnerships make the program stronger and, more importantly, are making a difference in the lives of our apprentices. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Julie. Again, a lot of information from all of the panelists today, so hopefully everybody's taking notes. And again, we'll have all of the chat and information available after the event. So going back to Peter, I want to ask you along the lines of helping veterans find employment, how are you helping veterans transition from a military background to civilian cyber-related jobs?
So that's a great question. I think my first answer kind of touched on how both Cerner and California State Guard are bringing in veterans from to help fill the needed jobs that are in the market for those two organizations. But another key component is, all right, you get your foot in the door, now what? So from a California State Guard perspective, for example, you don't necessarily have to have cyber certifications or a cyber specific skill set, and it certainly helps. But we really focus on looking for folks with passion that want to provide and help California from a cybersecurity perspective, doing a variety of different things, such as supporting blue team activities with the National Guard, to supporting CDT in some cases with the Security Operations Center, to participating in cyber exercises and things along those lines. Having the ability to get your foot in the door and actually get experience in those roles without not necessarily having a huge portfolio of skill sets is huge. That helps you build out your skill set or refine them so you're more attractive to the civilian marketplace when it comes to finding a position out there. From a Cerner perspective, similar to Amazon and IBM, we have apprenticeship programs where we help train individuals that are in cyber roles to become more cyber or build out their cyber skill sets. We also have, even beyond the apprenticeship programs, we have training programs at Cerner that help define and refine your skill sets and provide you a training pathway to increase your success in the cybersecurity field. So there are a lot of avenues in both organizations for folks to become better at in their job, but also for new folks wanting to get a cybersecurity certificate perhaps, or on-the-job experience, and showing on the resume that, yes, I go beyond a certification. I have 1, 2 years, 3 years of experience doing these activities. We provide a pathway for that, and that's a really important thing, especially in today's marketplace.
Great, thank you for that information. Okay, and then lastly, I want to address the last question to Isabel, and it's very specific to our environment right now. So Isabel, can you discuss how COVID has impacted small businesses and how the new marketplace trends are driving their cybersecurity needs during this unique time?
Yes, the impacts we all know have been intense, of course, requiring modifications to just be able to operate. There's been a change in consumer demand and what they want to see in their small businesses. And so it's really truly forcing change for resilience. So small businesses have had to pivot, relaunch with new business models to adapt. And that has meant a push towards higher technology adoption, rates we haven't seen before, and the need to create this presence online. So the aftermath of that all is coming, of course, a need to increase that cybersecurity health. So it actually might be the only silver lining, is that we've seen this large adoption of technology, which I believe will have strong impacts as businesses look for a new marketplace for expansion in the future. But we know that 76% of small businesses surveyed are relying on digital tools more than they were pre-COVID. That's a huge number, and a third of them said they would have closed. Either all or partially if they didn't have those tools. So they're recognizing the importance of being online, and that has a lot to do with the e-commerce and technology tools to drive revenues. And they've increased their online interactions with clients. They're starting to use more and more digital payments, and so with all that, of course, has resulting in increased demands for cybersecurity, and we're already starting to see that come to fruition. They're participating in education seminars, et cetera, to learn more, but we're hoping that we can accelerate this and really have an impact then on what the cybersecurity workforce needs will be. I mean, I think the bottom line is that small businesses need really simple, common sense solutions for their small businesses that they can adapt. So an outsourced workforce, through B2B opportunities. And I really think this is a huge opportunity for those in the cyber workforce to think through and make sure that we're able to build the skill sets needed for meeting these increased demands and to help these businesses monitor and secure their financial data and as their exposure based on pre-COVID numbers around cybersecurity are high. So I'm really hopeful by this conference as well, and just this renewed interest and want to make sure small businesses in that discussion as in terms of their needs and demands and what we should be doing to help them going forward.
Great, thank you, Isabel. So that concludes this panel. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing all of the great information that you did. So I will turn it over now back to Linda.
You're up next with your moderating the Q&A.
Yes, thank you. I have a number of questions in the Q&A box, but I think in the interest of respecting everyone's time, we'll just ask one question. The question is actually directed at IBM, but could be answered by all of our panelists. I'm interested in pre-apprenticeship to help candidates get exposure to the job. What is the process and what resources are available to develop a pre-apprenticeship program? So I guess that question would be to Stephen and then perhaps others who would also like to respond.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Great question. So as we've all been talking about today around the call, how we want to use apprenticeships, open up that talent pipeline, that aperture of the talent pipeline, and provide opportunities to populations, minorities, underrepresented minorities, to give them opportunities. But at the same time, one thing we realized with the new college jobs and apprenticeship program, they're all still very technical. And we want to make sure that those opportunities are there for this larger population when we open up this pipeline aperture. So what we did is underneath a USDOL scaling apprenticeship grant, we curated 4 pre-apprenticeship programs. One is in software engineering, mainframe computing, IT generalist, data scientist, and last is cybersecurity. These programs are funded by this U.S. Department of Labor grant. They're available basically to employers and agencies who have apprenticeship opportunities but want somebody to go through a pre-apprenticeship program to do some evaluation and get some fundamental skills and learning prior to starting an apprenticeship program. And that's what we've curated, and that's what's available underneath this grant. And we're also going to use this, as Nick and Peter mentioned about veterans, is we're actually going to use this pre-apprenticeship program when we go to these bases with these apprenticeship placement counselors I mentioned, these 8 bases. We're going to work with them so we can find transitioning service members prior to their service exit date to take a pre-apprenticeship program for where we or our clients may be hiring in those apprenticeship roles. So we really consider this as a great way to provide some foundational skills, foundational knowledge, and then we also have some soft skills in there. There's an IBM badge or badges that they will get depending on the program as they go through and complete the program. But this is just another opportunity for all of us to use to get this population that we all want to serve and to change the diversity, to give them the opportunity, right, for an opportunity for apprenticeship program. So Kelly, that's available. Anyone needs information about that, they can go, we'll pass that information out and get that out to everybody. But that's a great opportunity for folks, and I'll pass it back to you and other panel members to answer as well.
Thank you. Are there any other panelists who'd like to talk about pre-apprenticeship opportunities in their employment space? Perhaps maybe Julie Witten or Nick with Amazon, who have active apprenticeship programs. This is to any of the panelists.
Sure, this is Nick. So all of our apprenticeship programs, because we hire people from day one, they don't fall into the pre-apprenticeship program. But if people are interested in learning about the skills and the requirements needed to get into technical careers, especially if they're members of the military community, we have a free resource called AWS Educate. AWS Educate also has a specific link for veterans and military spouses that gives them access to free credits. So when they're learning about the cloud and they're using that knowledge to start to build in the cloud on AWS servers and AWS instances, there's some credits available for that. So you can simply go to the console, aws.educate.com, or you can search it online, and that's a good way to get some information before you start. But because we do all our apprenticeships as hire and then train, we bring in people with limited to no skill set right into our apprenticeship program from day one.
Kelly, this is Julie Witten from Government Operations Agency, and although we don't have an established pre-apprenticeship program at this point in time, we are interested in developing one in the future.
Thank you so much. I think with that concludes the Q&A portion, and back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Kelly. Our next panel is focusing on diversity and inclusion, and I have the pleasure of introducing Keith Koo, Managing Partner, Guardian Insight Group, host of Silicon Valley Insider, radio and podcast, and he'll be the facilitator for this panel.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks for the invite, and really enjoy being a part of the program so far. I will introduce our 4 panelists, which are Lakshmi Hanspal, who is the Global Chief Information Security Officer at Box, Jimmy Sanders, who is the Head of Information Security at Netflix DVD, Mickey Bellin, who is the CEO and a consultant at Inequality, and Michael Younger, who's the Deputy Secretary of Strategic Planning and Equity for the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency. Right before I begin, I do want to mention that it's been just a true blessing for many of us to be involved with this program. Mickey and I had a series of executive roundtables with Lakshmi and Jimmy, and we had a public, private, and education partnership in this series of events. So seeing this event today has just been a culmination of many things. And so I'm really happy now that we're going to be speaking about how we serve underserved communities with diversity and inclusion. So the first question we have is, what does diversity and inclusion mean for each of our panelists? And I wanted to start with Mickey.
Hi, thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Yeah, this is truly a pleasure to be part of this convening. So what does diversity and inclusion mean to me? There's a lot of talk about pathways. And I love the word pathway because it sounds really positive and adventuresome. like a lush forest with a winding trail. But to many, pathways feel like a maze of dark hallways with a multitude of locked doors. And here, students and employees are expected to navigate these unfamiliar doors with this enthusiastic motivation. The problem here is when there's a lack of proper guidance or practice or exposure, then their lives feel like they're left to chance. So when they fight, flight, or freeze, we label and define, exclude them from benefiting from those opportunities behind the doors. The Silicon Valley Executive Roundtable, as you mentioned, Keith, was an important gathering of like-minded leaders from public and private sectors who wanted to reform pathways for training, recruitment, and employment. The Cybersecurity Education and Workforce Development Pathway proposal, it served as a framework for our roundtable executives and participants to share diverse and inclusive perspectives and insight for a unified roadmap to help employers, educators, and leaders with cybersecurity training, mentorship, and recruitment. And then what we discovered was transformative. We realized that here were both sides wanting the same outcome, and by working together, we were able to identify the missing gaps, then gain the understanding, and then contribute our own expertise to support this initiative. So here, both industry and education were working together to define a healthy and productive cybersecurity education workforce and career development pipeline to assist students and future employees for the next 10 years. So diversity and inclusion will work only if we participate, advocate, and lead. Like parenting, we can't expect our children to raise themselves. We need to help students and employees by connecting, mentoring, and opening doors. So Keith, addressing the question, what does diversity and inclusion mean to me? Diversity is appreciating differences as opportunities to learn and challenging our beliefs. Inclusion is knowing the color of our lens and enabling the lens of others so we can innovate a grander perspective and insight. Diversity and inclusion means helping others truly belong. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mickey, and I thank you for all the work you've done on the Executive Roundtable. Lakshmi, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you?
Thank you, Keith, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. The lens that I put on diversity and inclusion is one of environmental, social, and governance criteria for our organizations. ESG, as it's called, is just a set of standards for a company's operation that socially conscious investors also look to screen before potentially investing. So when you think about as ESG criteria as an increasing way in which we are seen in our communities, with our employees, with prospects, whether they are customers or future employees, I think it's an important lens to put in it, especially when we think about in the field of cybersecurity. Digital security and privacy are about trust and transparency. So making D&I, diversity and inclusion, as part of our ESG operating excellence of an organization, I believe creates that sustained geared wheel that can continue to operate frictionlessly in this environment.
Thanks, Lakshmi. I loved how you made the connection between our business is already about trust and transparency. So opening the doors for diversity and inclusion in underserved communities makes all the sense in the world. Jimmy, you're up next.
Hello, and thank you, Keith. And for me, diversity and inclusion combines two aspects, because you have your professional instance where you're trying to practice diversity and inclusion, but you also have a social aspect. And in this scenario, they both collide. And what I mean by that is that you may find people who are in positions that are hungry and want to get into the field, but they don't have the pathways to do that. And so what I try to do, and what for me diversity and inclusion is reaching out to your network, reaching out to underprivileged people and providing them with access and opportunity, but also making sure that you're not hand-holding or giving it to them. They have to learn how to fish themselves, but you providing them the tools and the manual on how to fish, and you let them empower themselves. And that goes past race, creed, anything, but you also have to take into understanding that some classes of people are more disadvantaged than others. So that's what diversity and inclusion means to me.
Now, those are excellent points, Jimmy, that we really want to enable tools. That's what I really enjoy about the apprenticeship program, is it doesn't matter if you have a 4-year degree, you have the ability to take advantages. You're on an equal playing field with anyone else, and there's a lot of things that companies can do to tap into that talent pool. Deputy Michael Younger, thanks again for being with our panel. You have a really great perspective on this in your role with strategic planning and equity. What is your view on diversity and inclusion?
Yes, thank you, Keith, and thank you so much to my co-panelists who've really shed great light on the topic of diversity and inclusion. And D&I is really what you've heard, right? It's focusing on pathways and opportunities. It's really focusing on ESG, social and societal impacts of our private and public investments. It's really establishing a highly skilled workforce, as Jimmy stated, right? Talent, and making sure that we have what we need to continue increasing the talent pool in this particular profession. So the only thing I would add is that, diversity is the presence of our differences, and it really amounts to representation at all levels of an organization. Inclusion is an aspiration to ensure everyone feels accepted and valued, and this amounts to access and opportunity. For example, although minority representation within the cybersecurity profession is slightly higher than the overall U.S. minority workforce, there is a disproportionate amount of representation of racial and ethnic minorities in non-management positions in the cybersecurity profession. So I think in order to fully grasp the importance of diversity and inclusion, I think one must also include the third prong, which is equity, right? Whether it be racial equity or pay equity, it's really an important aspect and really what completes that conversation: diversity, equity, and inclusion. So equity is really promoting justice, impartiality, and fairness within procedures, processes, and the customized distribution of resources, information, and opportunity by institutions and system, one of which I represent in the public sector. So tackling these equity issues requires an understanding of the root cause of outcome disparities within our workplaces and our society at large. And the only other note I would add, on this topic of diversity is that we often have a incorrect assumption that if we get diverse candidates into an organization and train them to be like, quote unquote, us, we will have succeeded at diversity. I think this couldn't be, really further from the truth, in that the point of having diverse workforce is to create a place where an organization leverages the value of diversity to improve outcomes. You wouldn't want, let's say, a 20-something female of color in your organization and have her act just like or think just like her colleague, who's a middle-aged white male colleague, right? You'd want both of them to bring their unique experiences, thought processes, and skills to the problem-solving table, knowing that cybersecurity is truly a field that requires a multidisciplinary approach to problem-solving. So these diversity, equity, and inclusion principles are really central to our efforts at the Labor Agency, and it really relates to developing programs and delivering services that offer equal and equitable access to all communities, including underserved and disinvested communities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Michael. I really enjoyed your response. And also, if anyone's interested, I know of a group that's been studying, as you mentioned, underserved communities and leadership ranks for the last 12 years. So as you mentioned, doesn't matter if at a worker level that there's certain pockets that seem to have had a better representation at a leadership ranks, all minorities are actually lower than what the majority would be. So if anybody's interested in that, they can ask me for that later. So I want to transition to our next question, which is much harder because everyone has their own unique perspective. But what does success mean to you in a diversity and inclusion program? And I wanted to start with Lakshmi.
Thanks, Keith. success is a multifaceted metric, I think, and you're going to hear different, as you said, different responses from us, and I think that's great, because if we are all looking at it in different lenses, then we are going to amplify that success in some way. But the way I look at the lens for success is the following: if we were to take a consumer side or consumer lens on this, we look to build a workforce pipeline that we would like to tap into talent, repurpose or reskill workforce. We had a number of questions on the veteran front earlier in our conversations with different panels. And we're also looking to build that earlier on with the degree, the 2- and 4-year degree offerings that we have. So as we look into building that pipeline, success is in 3 fronts. The first is that, are we contributors to that? We all are. The fact that we're all here, close to 400 of us gathered here today talking about it in itself is a sign of success, because it means that several of us, if not all of us, are committed in the success of building that pipeline. The second one is, can we be customer zero of that pipeline? We talked about apprenticeship programs, pre-apprenticeship, and then on the veteran reskills, all of that, can we be customer zero of that? And the third aspect is, are we thinking about retention just as much as onboarding or sourcing? So when, all the conversations we have here, building the pipeline, building the workforce, and creating the excitement, helps with sourcing, helps with onboarding. And then it's up to us as organizations, as leaders, as employers, to see what continued programs need to be in place for retention, so this workforce continues to be inspired to be in this field.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Great point. I think it's definitely an integrated approach that will define success for the organizations that adopt not just apprenticeships, but their entire talent management infrastructure. Jimmy, what's your perspective? What do you define success?
Well, honestly, success to me is the panelists on this panel right now. It's a diverse panel, and hopefully we were picked based on our merits and also because we come from diverse backgrounds. But the other measure of success when I'm looking at it is, what does it look like from a historical perspective? Because many times I see a company, they'll do something for a splash. They'll hire a Black PR person, or they'll hire a Black recruiter, and they say, oh, all of a sudden now we're a wonderful, diverse company. But what happens 5 years from now? Is that person still at the position? Has their hiring rate actually changed? Has the retention rate actually changed? So for me, over time, does a varied group of people feel comfortable in this environment? And do they have a seat at the table? Because as Michael was alluding to, many times you may see a lot of minorities or people of color or women who work at a company, but are they actually on the board of directors? Are they actually have direct access to the CEO or the upper managers? And if you don't have that seat at the table or that equity, then you become a nice figurehead, but you're not. That's not a definition of success for me. So for me, success is when a diverse group of people have input and access to help make decisions within a company and within an environment.
Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that is exactly why we do track hiring, but we should also be tracking leadership and how do we address that. Mickey, what is your take on defining success?
You know what? I think success is, I'm all about connections and collaboration, also resources. But because my heart and passion is really focused on nonprofits and helping them sustain themselves, it's always about the resources. So, like with everybody on the panel and the access, having a commitment, having that dedication, the collaboration, all of this is really, really critical. So I'm going to just mention or do a shout out for 2 incredible organizations, which I was absolutely blown away. It was Love Never Fails, it's an organization that was originated to protect, prevent, and heal victims of human trafficking. And another organization was Ignite Worldwide, which believes that every girl deserves equal access to STEM education at their school. So here, these two organizations came together to propose a grant to create tech apprenticeship opportunities for 100 women and girls in San Francisco Bay Area. The two organizations were very different, but they came together and aligned to submit this proposal, and we had great support and great, just commitment, integrity that was invested in this. And here we came together, we put together this narrative that was a solid STEM pathway for girls and women, and it included the panels, field trips, workshops, conferences, mentorship, case management, coaching, professional development, technology, and entrepreneurship training for girls and women that began in middle school and went to IT career placement. So when you look at two organizations with so much potential coming together to collaborate and passionately drafting a narrative that can help 100 women and girls in the Bay Area, I think that shows real passion and integrity and the use of their resources. And it's organizations like that that I think really need our support and need help to sustain themselves. So it's, success is when we combine these diverse and inclusive practices to improve those opportunities to help our future, our workforce, and our leaders.
Thanks, Mickey. And I think just calling out Love Never Fails, founded by my friend Vanessa Russell, former Cisco colleague. But the things that you, Jimmy, and Michael have all talked about today, that's an example of a great success story where they make an impact on real technical training with real jobs for victims of abuse and trafficking. So great call out. I want to finish this question with you, Michael, in how does the state's perspective and your own on what success means to you with diversity and inclusion?
Absolutely. Thanks, Keith. I think success from the state's perspective, and specifically the labor agency, kind of where I sit, is really defined by ensuring a fully functional, highly collaborative, performance and outcome-driven workforce ecosystem, right? That includes, workforce development partners, education providers, private and public sector entities, philanthropy, right? Community-based organizations, making sure that they're fully functioning and very much collaborative. And ensuring that services offered by entities like the Department of Apprenticeship Standards, from the Department of Industrial Relations, the State Workforce Development Board, local boards, California Employment Training Panel, right, where funding is provided for incumbent workers, and the Employment Development Department for Workforce Services, Youth Employment Services, and the like are seamlessly accessed by all. Right, I think we want to connect workers to employers and to training. And workforce and economic development partners that they need to be successful. More specifically, our kind of focus buckets are really aligning funding and programs to drive economic recovery, equity, and jobs quality, right? It's a lot of the work the state board is doing regarding high road training partnerships and using those partnerships, those models as a core framework for the workforce system. More broadly, also centering our public sector, as a recovery engine and strengthening partnerships with community-based organizations and other workforce development partners. I know we've recently hosted a state hiring workshop attended by 1,000+ potential job seekers, as well as community-based organizations and education providers, primarily to elicit the excitement around public service, right? And so what you heard earlier from a previous panel is that there's 2,000+ jobs in the IT realm in the public sector, right? How can we better advertise and bring those jobs to communities that have a great deal of lived experience, passion, and drive to move that forward. Also, we're initiating a program called Pathways into State Service, which is a public-private partnership with community-based organizations that serves to prepare these underserved and disinvested communities members the opportunity to enhance their literacy skills, basic skills to obtain entry-level public service jobs, right? So this is a targeted effort to ensure that we're addressing the needs of individuals with high barriers to employment for careers that are absolutely in demand, inclusive of the ones we've discussed today. In addition, infusing equity and job quality into our private sector employment engagement strategy, right? We want to continue to infuse with our employer partners that high road concept. And many of the high road employers are actually here on this panel. So we're very grateful for them. And so it's lifting those employer partners up in terms of how they address both job quality and equity moving forward more broadly. And then deep in our regional focus, we know that throughout California, there are a lot of pockets of very underserved communities as well, Inland Empire, Central Valley, Fresno, and others. And we want to utilize those examples to bring forward and continue to permeate the equity goals that we want to drive. And then finally, driving apprenticeship strategy, right? This is one use case, California's cybersecurity apprenticeship program, but to increase the numbers and sectors in an innovative way that supports the cybersecurity program and any and all apprenticeship programs moving forward. So those are kind of some buckets that we're really looking forward to over this next year to really partner with each of you and prospective future workers as well as employers. So grateful for that time.
All right, well, thank you very much, Michael. And I want to close off this panel with just saying, as a lifelong resident and native of California, I'm just very pleased with all the work that the public, private, and education sectors are doing in this program. I want to once again thank my panelists, Lakshmi Hansbal, Global CISO of Box, Jimmy Sanders, Head of Information Security at Netflix DVD, Mickey Bellin of Ecology, and Michael Younger, Deputy Secretary. And before I end, I do want to turn it back over to Kelly Mackey and Keith Clement. And I also want to thank them and the team for the wonderful job they've done today. So let's give them a hand. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you so much, panelists. That was amazing and inspiring. I know that I have a question or two in the Q&A that I wanted to get to, but Mickey, can you provide or help attendees gain connection with Love Never Fails?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, my life's work is about meeting and knowing what organizations are doing to help our community. So, you know, Love Never Fails, Ignite Worldwide, these are two incredible organizations. There are so many others, and really it's about collaboration and really empowering their constituents with those opportunities, because if we all come together, we can create these pathways that are working simultaneously to others, and that's how we're really going to make that impact long term.
Yes, and I often hear folks talking about ways to engage with diversity and inclusivity, and to me it really often goes back to the need for them to work with not-for-profits and engage in community and neighborhood organizations. So I hope that folks are able to reach out and make connections. So out of the Q&A from Cesar Gamez, he asks, how do you ensure equity, but also impartiality to help job seekers land the roles they desire based on their skills and effort, and not just the race, ethnicity, background? So Keith, would you like to direct that? I know Lakshmi and Michael would both be wonderful candidates for the job. I see Lakshmi, you're unmuted.
Thanks, Keith. Yes, I'm being very careful with my mute button. You know, I think it starts from the beginning, and there was a question observation for us on that. It starts with the job description. How do we make the job description in a way that it feels A, inclusive, and 2, supportive of reskill and retraining or development and all that is needed, and with an idea that you don't have to check all the boxes. that the JD, that the job description comes from. So I think that the answer to that question, step 0 or step 1, is about how do we create those job descriptions with our people operations, with our hiring managers, with a lens on ESG and everything that we spoke about here, right? It starts there. And then it follows through with the sourcing process, with the interview panelists that you would put together for this candidate to meet, and having the conversations with the candidate on what are their thoughts, what are their expectations on D&I, on equity, on unbiased selection, whatever they may be. But because I think it's important to understand where they're coming from too.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lakshmi. So Michael, can you give us some strategies for local and state governments to keep in mind when thinking of diversity and inclusion and opening up their workforce?
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith, and really appreciate Lakshmi's commentary. I would second that as it relates to job postings and being very clear that unconscious bias and implicit bias lives within all of us, right? And so I think how we draft our duty statements and how we kind of map out how we're going to recruit is a very important kind of first step as well, and to take into account that when we're actually looking for and establishing out competencies for the jobs, that we're being broad, knowing that the job requires a certain level of skills, but then some skills can be taught also on the job, and being very amenable to those opportunities. The second thing that I'd say specific to diversity and inclusion is that when we talk about not being impartial, it's very important to ensure that our recruitment channels are broad, are diverse, so that we're seeking out potentially communities, individuals that may not come into traditional kind of recruitment channels, right? And I think that's how we could, really tackle this conversation about being diverse and inclusive as well. And so, looking at your recruitment channels and making sure that you have a wide-ranging view of where those skills may come from. And sometimes they could be non-traditional. A lot of the work that we're doing is really looking at communities that have the highest barriers to employment. And so how do you do that? You strike partnerships on the ground, community-based organization and others, seek out providers that have a better pulse on those communities for guidance. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. And Jimmy, are you hanging around? I see. Are you?
Yeah, I'm still here. And for me,
howdy.
Yeah.
So we were talking about hiring and selection and diversity and inclusion. Can you talk about retention strategies and how to keep folks on the team for the long term? Do you have any guidance and insight for us?
Yeah, so I have two perspectives on retention. You retain the people as long as their career is aligning with their goals and the company's goals that they happen to work with. One of the things that I hope to always have is to have somebody who progresses further than my pathway can guide them within the company, and then they join a better company or they get a better job that happens to be available for their skill set. To me, that is a great thing of retention. And so what you try to do is you always need to understand where that person, where that employee happens to be coming from, and where do they think they want to go. Because one of the things that always happens happens often, because I don't want to over broadly, is new people in security, the first thing they want to do is be red teamers, hackers, the thing they see on TV. They don't, many times they don't understand the vast ocean of security jobs that are available. So I work with them to let them know the different pathways that are available. Once that's established, then we work on the goals on how you meet those criteria. And the thing that I've seen the most employees are happy with is that when they have expectations that are not fictional and they're very tangible. So you make sure that there are numbers such as you can pass this type of certification, or you can handle or handle this amount of logs a day, or something that's number based instead of you do a good job. Good job is so subjective. So ensuring that things are tangible, and when that employee outperforms his or her job, they don't stay in that job. And if you can't keep them at the job at their current employment, then you work with them to get them a better job, because 5 or 10 years later, you may actually be working for them. So that's how I would answer that question.
It's key. It's key. Thank you so much for your insight, Jimmy. Very useful strategies. And Keith, I wanted to thank you for hosting Kelly Mackey and I on your Silicon Valley Insider radio show recently. I actually had the opportunity this weekend to listen in on a variety of your radio shows. Thought very highly of it. I really appreciate the one that you did about assisted care living. I thought that was a very meaningful conversation that you had. So I just wanted to say kudos to you and your colleagues and producers at Silicon Valley Insider, and great for having everybody here today. I do believe that, Linda, it's to you.
Thank you, Dr. Clement, and Keith Koo, and your diversity and inclusion panelists as well.
Thank you.
And finally, here to give our acknowledgement and closing remarks are Kelly Mackey and Dr. Keith Clement.
Thank you, Linda. I'd like to thank today the following people for joining us: California Labor Secretary Julie Su, the Guy Arafane, Shamla Nedu, Brenda Bridges-Cruz, Julie Witten, Isabel Guzman, Stephen Dodd, Peter Liebert, Nick Curry, Keith Koo, Mickey Bellin, Michael Younger, Lakshmi Hanspal, and Jimmy Sanders. Keith?
Thank you very much, Kelly. I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge Linda Mount, Director Mark Ghilarducci, Shani Weber, Dr. Sheila Thomas, David Rusting, and thank you to all the other groups that have been involved in the countless hours and staff hours put into the cybersecurity industry convening, including our colleagues over at the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, the California Department of Technology, the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, GoBiz, and the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency. I would like to have in my closing statement the idea that 2020 is clearly going to be the year for cybersecurity workforce development education in the state of California. We have a strategy and a framework for a cybersecurity career education pipeline and pathway intended to serve 50,000 career entry-level positions across the state of California between 2020 and 2030. We have the development of a California cybersecurity essential workforce, youth, pre, and registered apprenticeship talent model strategy and framework as well, so that we can lead folks and students from about the 5th and the 6th grade on into the degree and certificate programs of their choosing. And I would also like to mention acknowledge, and thank all of those that have participated in the facilitated collaboration that has gone on between industry, both public and private sector, government agencies and organizations, as well as California education and the higher education communities as the key partners and major stakeholders in the California Cybersecurity Career Education Pipeline Pathway Project. Thank you very much. Kelly?
Thank you, Keith. When I have the pleasure of meeting with employers, one of the first questions I ask them is, are your current workforce development recruitment strategies working for your organization? Invariably, in most instances, the answer is no, not really. So So my next question to them is, why not incorporate a state-registered apprenticeship program to ensure that you have a talent pipeline of skilled workers now and in the future? This time-tested work-based learning model is fast becoming the gold standard of many industries, including your own. This is clearly evidenced by the number of companies that have embedded the model over the last decade. As we outlined in our prior presentation, the related and supplemental instruction component of our gold standard model represents the theoretical part of learning. This followed by the on-the-job training, which allows those apprentices to get the practical application of what they've learned, in many cases, in the classroom the night before. In the case of cybersecurity, the model is further strengthened. Through the work of the Governor's Task Force led by Dr. Keith Clement, we have really enhanced this model to incorporate certification-forward curriculum driven by you. As Dr. Clement mentioned, over the last 2 years, we've been listening and incorporating many of the core elements that you feel are critical to ensure that you have a workforce that meets the demands operationally of your organization. Whether you're a small-sized company or a multinational corporation, this model can fit for your organization. If you're a mid-sized company, it works for you too. One of the elements that we really like to highlight as a part of our apprenticeship model is the ability to really diversify your workplace. The model, by extension, lends to reaching underserved populations and individuals who would have otherwise not qualified to meet the needs of employers based on minimum qualifications for these roles. There are pockets of excellence everywhere throughout our state. There are individuals who have an aptitude for learning and who are interested in filling these vital roles that are so in demand that you're looking to fill. You don't have to take my word for it. The good news for you is that this 21st century solution has been adopted by a lot of companies, including the likes of IBM, Sony, Kaiser, Dignity Health, Tesla, Palo Alto Networks, Amazon, and the list goes on. Let us help you through our apprenticeship and workforce innovation staff. A strategic advisor can come work with you individually in your organization and craft out a model that will meet your specific needs, so in turn, you can meet the demands of your customers. Let's put Californians back to work, and let's use the apprenticeship model to get there. I hope that you do contact us. If you would like to have a meeting with one of our strategic business advisors, please reach out to me, and you can find my contact information directly on the slide in front of you. Keith?
Thank you very much, Kelly. Deeply appreciate all of the hard work that you've done on this California Industry Cybersecurity Convening. And of course, my contact information is also available on the screen for those that are interested in talking about cybersecurity education programs, design and development. So thank you so much.
Thank you.